afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Special Finance Committee meeting where we have 3 items on the agenda. So first item is 1A, Transportation Sales Tax Update. Ms. Devery is going to do that. As well as 1B, somebody will come for Sustainability Initiatives. Okay, and each member of council serves on this committee. I'm the chairman of this committee, so Ms. Devery, it's all yours. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand so that way she doesn't get distracted and we'll recognize you and let you ask that question. Go right ahead, ma'am.
Okay, good evening, council members. Every summer we bring our funding recommendations for our annual allocation program to you all. And so we decided for this briefing, we were going to give you an update on those allocation projects before we bring you that yellow sheet in August. So I kind of wanted to give you all an overview. We have 10 project managers and we have had 174 projects that we've worked on in the last year and a half. That does include CTC and the larger projects. We've treated over 672 roads, and that's funded through CTC and transportation. We have completed so far in the last year and a half 15 projects. That's about one a year. They're all over the county. They're anywhere from local pavement, intersection, rural roads, all categories.
I see I got Mr. Moody favorite on there, number 10.
Been a good year.
Well, yeah, not number 10.
Good 18 months in West Ashley.
And some of those projects that we have completed, I'll show you one for each category. The first one, Appaloosa on Johns Island. It's a local paving. It's a dirt to pave road. Next to it, we have Maxwell Street Sidewalk, which is a sidewalk in North Charleston in a neighborhood. It has a park in it. Next up is the Soul Agree turn lane. We added a right turn lane. The Soul Agree community couldn't get out to go left towards James Island, so they really advocated for this right turn lane during beach traffic so that they could actually get to town. And then Lighthouse Point Boulevard, we are still working through some utility conflicts, but that is substantially complete. It's a beautiful path/sidewalk, and we took the vines out of the oak trees, and it turned out really pretty. We currently still have 6 projects under construction, and all of these are on the west side, West Ashley, Hollywood, and Johns Island currently. And some pictures we have. Adele Street, that's one of our rural roads. That's in West Ashley. Then we have Tretzler. I don't know if y'all know where Wide Awake Plantation is in Hollywood, but it's a beautiful road. So we put some pervious pavement to avoid tree impacts. There's some beautiful trees along that road. And then K Street, which is the connector road in between Walter and Berry Hill on Johns Island. So before we come to y'all next month with our recommendations, I think y'all all are aware of these issues, but we have seen quite a bit of inflation on materials. We're not getting the bidders we used to get. We used to get about 5. We're seeing 2. Sometimes we're seeing 0. And when we do award those bids, a lot of times we're finding that the contractor can't get those materials. So just to give y'all an overview on how bad the prices have gone up, we looked at similar projects from last year to this year. So the first one, for a sidewalk project, I wanted to show y'all the pipe prices have gone up anywhere from roughly 40 to 140% based on the pipe size. The next one I had is 700 crosswalks, which is a DOT initiative to improve pedestrian safety at 700 crosswalks in South Carolina. We bid this one project 3 times because they were higher than their prices, and they've gone up 40%, over 40% in the last year. And then for local paving, the base course that you put in before you put the asphalt, that's gone up about 75%. And then our asphalt has gone up 80%, and a lot of that is related to the gas prices. Mm-hmm. And then last, we have a signal installation project here. Whenever you put one of those decorative signals, there's currently a 9-month lead time on those signal poles, and the signal contractors are probably busier than anyone, and the prices have gone up over 70%. So just to give y'all a snapshot of some that we have recently bid, so you could see how many bidders we're getting. Again, 5 years ago, we would see 5 bidders easily. Sometimes you're seeing 0 bidders, so this is a problem. We have reached out to the contractors, and they think maybe the private sector will dry up a little bit later this fall, so hopefully that will change things. This isn't just an issue we're having. The DOT is facing similar problems, so they have developed an escalation program where if you bid a year ago, they're going to adjust those prices because it is impacting contractors too. So we're actually going to put in a request to adopt this policy for our Glen McConnell Parkway project. And some other things we're doing, I told y'all there were some material shortages. The county and the DOT is allowing us to use other pipe materials, so we're using more plastic pipe. A lot of the other municipalities haven't jumped on board with that yet. So if they don't want to use other type of pipe materials, then we're adding 150 days to our contract, letting the contractor know we know there's a lead time. We're going to add 150 days to your contract time so you can get the pipe. And then we're paying them to stockpile all the other materials associated with that pipe. And we have just been recently made aware that any water work that has to be moved, there's a 40-week lead time on ductile iron pipe as well, which is what CWS uses. So we have a lot of bids ready to go to construction. You can see we have a list of tentative lettings, and then we have currently in procurement. We're working with procurement to make sure that no more than 1 to 2 go out a week, because we're obviously not going to get bidders if we just throw them all out there. And we're also trying to stagger these, knowing that we probably don't have enough money in our budget to fund them all. So at the next meeting, what y'all are going to see is a request to use all the money towards carryover needs so we can knock out all these projects due to the inflation. And that is all I have.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Debbie? Mr. Moody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Toma and staff for this. Debbie, I think you answered one of my questions. Finish what we've got in process. Is that what I'm hearing you guys say is let's tap the brakes and finish what we've got, what we've committed to the public, and let's do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. On some of these other projects, especially smaller ones, does it make sense to sort of tap the brakes a little bit and see, somebody's got a cracked sidewalk, we want, or whatever, we need to repave, rejuvenate the roads, we need to do that, but at what point? Do we wait and see if these prices come down a little bit? Do we just kind of tap the brakes? I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
We're looking at projects case by case, and again, one thing we're doing is we're looking at other pipe materials. We actually called all the municipalities in and said, hey, you might be able to get better pricing and this project done quicker if you would entertain using something else. And a lot of them just won't come to those meetings, or they just don't want to do anything new. So we're doing it, the county's doing it, the DOT's doing it. So we're trying to do everything we can and thinking, outside the box. But again, we have reached out to contractors, and they're saying maybe October, November, they're thinking that they'll have a little bit more free time. So I'm hoping that is the case.
I don't think any of these projects are big enough to break up. You may recall when Secretary Hall was here, she was talking about some of the bigger projects, breaking them up to get more bidders in, or any of these projects the size that maybe we could take advantage of that.
We could look into that, yes, sir. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll lump two projects together if they're in the same vicinity, hoping that will entice more bidders. We do that often.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? Ms. Johnson?
I'd like to know if you have any notification on the website as to the delays on some of these projects so that the public would be aware.
We always put these briefings, once they're done to council, on our website so they can access that. And we do have our tentative letting schedule on our website as well, but we can certainly add a pop-up that kind of explains our situation as well if you would like.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Ms. Debbie, I got a question that's probably not related to this, but, and if you know the answer, fine. If you don't, you can get back with us. The Northern Pitchfork.
Yes, sir.
I read a article, somebody made a letter to the editor about shady business going on, but we know that we had to obtain those permits from the Corps as well as the city, not wanting to throw somebody under the bus, but the city was a little late. We had to reapply because they changed their ordinances, and that just kind of held us up, in getting things to the Corps. So can you give us some kind of synopsis on a timeline when this thing is going to start,
Sure. So as you said, it did take 4 years to get the city's MS4 permits.
Right.
So once we got that in January, the nationwide permit regulation changes went in effect. And so we got those nationwide regulations. We had to resubmit it, what we call a re-verification permit. The Corps has approved it. Now the new process requires them to kick it to DHEC. So now DHEC had to post a 30-day notice in the paper, which they have done. They came back to us and they said, we need to make sure this is the least environmentally damaging practical alternative. So we weren't sure where to start that at. Do we start it back at Maybank Widening, which may have had less wetland impacts than the Northern Pitchfork? So we kind of looked at what they were asking and asked for clarification and showed them several alignments we just looked at for the Northern Pitchfork.
Okay.
We got them that information within 2 weeks of them requiring it, and it's still under review.
Okay.
So if I had to guess, and I've been saying this forever, and it's always something, but I would say a month or two, that one would be out to bid.
Yeah, okay. So just want to clarify that we are moving forward with the Northern Pitchfork, because I don't
Yes.
want people thinking that, we're not going to do it. It's just that all these permitting and all these other stuff,
Now-
got in the way and it slowed the project down, not by our doing, but by other things. So thank you for that, but I just wanted that, people to know that we are committed to doing the Northern Pitchfork.
Yes, sir, and that is one that you'll see for carryover needs as well because
Okay.
of the inflation.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, sustainability initiatives, who's going to do that?
Members of council, tonight we have Ms. Ariel Gernstein. She's your sustainability coordinator. She's been with the county for approximately 10 months, and she would like to tell you what she's been working on, and she has an ask for council on her next steps.
Ms. Gernstein?
All right, so I'm going to be talking about sustainability updates. So first, I'm going to just start off kind of so we're all on the same page with what is sustainability. So the definition that I'm presenting is essentially sustainability focuses on three main concepts, those being people, finances, and the environment. And it's important that we balance those concepts together when we're thinking about planning and building projects and all those kinds of things. So really the integration of those three concepts. Sustainability is important because if you think about the Earth's resources, we only have a finite number of resources. Some of these resources can be replenished, like you cut down a tree, you can plant a new one, others cannot. So the overuse of resources will lead to an unsustainable planet for future generations. So this slide just kind of goes over a few climate facts specific to Charleston. The first one talks about tidal floods. So on average, Charleston saw between 10 and 25 tidal floods per year in the 1990s. And more recently, in 2019, there was 89, and in 2020, 69. The second bullet point talks about sea level rise and that the sea has risen 10 inches since 1950, with an acceleration to 1 inch every 2 years since 2010. And the third one just talks about increased high heat days from 1979 to 2020. And the reason I mention these things is because sea level rise can cause beach erosion, worsening floods, and increased heat can reduce agricultural yields, increase the risk of heat stroke and other heat-related illnesses. So when I first started in this position, the main project that I was working on was this greenhouse gas inventory, which I believe was sent to all of you. So if you have any questions, happy to answer those. But the inventory essentially provides emissions for greenhouse gases for the years 2018 and 2020. I chose 2020 as a comparison year because it was a little bit different with the pandemic starting that year. The inventory provides carbon dioxide equivalent emissions for county government operations, Charleston County in general, so not just government operations, but residents, all the buildings, things like that, and then all the cities and towns located geographically within the county. So this inventory is complete and will be published after this update. So the next step, since the inventory establishes emissions levels, will be to work on a climate action plan. So the idea is that we would work on an RFP process, which is currently working on after this briefing. The plan will establish greenhouse gas reduction goals, and so it'll establish percentage reduction goals, the time we want to achieve those goals, and the activities to meet our goals. So it's essentially a framework. The activities will be in line with the actions in the City of Charleston's existing climate action plan, which was published last year. So this just gives an overview of the climate action plans that already exist in the Southeast. So just starting with South Carolina, Greenville has a plan in the works, and Columbia is committed to 100% clean energy by 2036, although there's not a formal climate action plan for that city. And then the table just shows, so we currently have one plan, which is the City of Charleston's in South Carolina. And it just shows some of the other nearby states, with Florida, Virginia, North Carolina, and Georgia having the largest number of plans. 13 of the numbers listed in this chart were of counties, and the rest were of cities. So the first step in establishing the climate action plan is to establish a committee. So I'm presenting an ordinance tonight to establish a climate action committee. The committee would act as an advisory board to county council on all matters related to the climate action plan and sustainability action. So the idea would be that it would be for during plan development and then exist as a body afterwards while the activities are being, in action. This is just some more detailed information on the Climate Action Committee. So the idea is to establish a committee similar to the City of Charleston's Resilience and Sustainability Advisory Committee, which is already in existence, and they were able to pass their climate action plan with this committee's help. So the bullets below the main one just list the representation that's envisioned for the committee, so technical experts, energy company representative, Home Builders Association, higher education representative, council members, the COG, and Chamber of Commerce. So the rest of the presentation just kind of talks about some of the work that I have done, and so giving some updates on that. So when I started out by interviewing the DCAs and the department heads on what they thought sustainability was and their perspectives, just to kind of get a better sense of where everyone was in the county on this topic. So I published that report internally, and it just led to some project ideas and brainstorming initially when I first started. The other kind of ongoing project in the county was we revamped, this is a project with sustainability and environmental management, to revamp the Green Liaisons team. It's a team of county employees from each department, so each department has a representative. We do different environmental actions within the county. So right now we have a printing reduction competition going on between the departments, and we are working on establishing office battery drop-off sites within the county. I also write a monthly column in the County Courier called Sustainable Steps, which basically just gives kind of some ideas on new topics in sustainability and or sustainability programming going on in Charleston County. Some other projects I just wanted to highlight. So we are looking at energy efficiency projects for buildings. So I completed putting the county buildings in Energy Star to measure their energy and water use over time. So we can kind of track which buildings are, more or less energy efficient to highlight and identify future projects for energy efficiency. The other thing that we've done is we are now using the Green Globe certification, which, if you're not familiar with that, is similar to like a LEED certification for new construction, for larger new construction buildings. So this was an effort between facilities, myself, and capital projects. And the other piece is for the comprehensive plan, there's currently an energy element and I'm working with planning to revise it to energy and sustainability. Another project that I just wanted to highlight was electric vehicle charging. There's an internal team made up of several different departments in the county that were working to start a pilot program for charging stations at county locations. And the grant application that you approved at the last meeting is going toward this project. Just some communications and marketing I wanted to highlight. So the first one is for resiliency and sustainability. So we have a joint website as part of the county site where we're going to be posting about our projects and any documents and education. So anything related to resiliency and sustainability you can find on the website. I also released a sustainability video for staff and then also a public version just to kind of, give people a better idea of what sustainability is and why it's important. And I'm also working on social media, so Instagram and Facebook for sustainability. And right now that's focused primarily on public education, but when there's more programming coming out, it'll be a means to market the programming.
Any questions? Ms. Johnson?
Yes, I'm just wondering, how do you measure the increase in the different gases when you talk about the greenhouse gases increase?
Yeah, so basically we look at 4 different sectors. So the main sectors, and this is a common protocol that's used for all municipalities and counties use. We look at buildings, transportation, landfill, and then I added an additional one because we have our Greenbelt program and I wanted to highlight that. So with forested land, forests actually absorb carbon, which is a good thing. So the other 3 sectors are, it's an increase in carbon, but with the forested land, with the Greenbelt properties, it's highlighting that we're actually removing carbon. So to go back to your question, the 3 main sectors being buildings, transportation, and landfill. And so with buildings, I got data from all of the utilities from Dominion, Berkeley, and Santee Cooper. So like kilowatt data, so energy use data. From the transportation sector, I use Google transportation data. They have data that looks at vehicle miles traveled for basically all large cities and counties in the United States. And then for the waste section, I got tonnage data for the landfill from environmental management. And so the system, the software we used converts these different measurements into carbon dioxide equivalents. And so we're able to compare everything throughout these 3 sectors.
So if we worked on getting solar energy put on the houses, that would really help us with this sustainability as well?
Yeah, I mean, renewable energy is always a big part
a big difference,
of climate
or?
plans. Yeah, it would make a big difference for sure.
Okay. Well, you seem to know something about this greenhouse here, the greenhouse gases, and I like the information that you shared earlier with me, and I was just wondering, could you tell us a little bit about your background so we'll know what we have here in Charleston County? And
Yeah,
having
sure.
you on our staff?
Yeah, sure.
Look so young.
Thank you. Thanks. So I did my master's at American University. So I have my master's in natural resources and sustainable development. And before working here, I was previously working at the EPA Office of Water.
Okay, well, welcome, and
Thank you.
thank you for the presentation.
Yep.
Anybody else? Mr. Moody?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gernstein, thank you. And I really found the greenhouse gas inventory. Was that your report that you sent to us?
Yes.
My question to you is, from 2018 to 2019, almost across the board, and I understand COVID was in there to some extent, but across the board, greenhouse gases have had huge declines, with the exception of residential, which might make sense because we've got a lot more houses, I think, in the community. And even every municipality is down 16, 30, 19, 18%, and
Yeah.
just huge declines. So aren't we going in the right direction already?
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate you pointing that out because that is definitely something that I talked about in the report. From my analysis, I do think COVID is a factor in that. It's hard to tell how much of a factor, of course. I think the other factor, I show some pie charts in the inventory that show the makeup of like the utilities composition of what their portfolio is. So the first one shows it's much heavier on coal, and then so I believe that the transition to natural gas has really shown those decreases. And so I think because there is a smaller transition to renewables, that decrease is going to just become flatter and not continue to decrease.
Okay. I might buy that. So I guess if we're going in the right direction, my comment would be your contention is we're going way down, but you think it's going to kind of flatten out again. Are we building a lot of structure and a lot of process around, maybe are we putting a process where there's not a problem?
Yeah, I think that's a fair analysis. But I just think that given the portfolio of where the utilities currently are and the slower transition to renewables, I just don't think there's going to continue to be a decrease.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Reverend Middleton?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank our sustainability officer for her report and would like to move that we approve the Climate Action Committee so that they might continue on building a climate action plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Just, Ms. Johnson, you mentioned solar panels, a few minutes ago. So I don't know if this is with every insurance company, but you might want to be cautious. I had a call from one of my constituents the other day saying that he got a notice in the mail that they weren't going to insure his house any longer because of the panels that's on top of the roof. So maybe when these people do these panels, they might want to try to find a way in the yard to do it, because if these insurance companies are going to stop insuring, now you're going to have to go back and take it off and put on a new roof. So I want to call, other insurance company to make sure, but that's what he told me, because he's a senior citizen and he was seeking help for replacing his roof because of the solar panels. So let us be careful with that, and I think people need to research that before they put those things on top of their roof. Ms. Honeycutt, and then I go to Reverend Middleton.
I don't know that there needs to be an amendment because I don't know that there's a process, but I would like to see council's involvement in the selection of this committee. Just like we did with the Affordable Housing Committee, we came up with a group of 13 or 14 members that I felt were largely agreed upon. I just want to make sure we don't end up with a lopsided group that we're not ready for.
Would you accept that amendment to?
Yes, I absolutely accept that.
Council recommendation?
And I do believe she included technical experts, energy company representatives, home builders, persons from the higher education sector, council members, the COG, Chamber of Commerce.
How many numbers of that, Mr. Middleton, you just read off?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories. But certainly could be
Maybe a 13-member board or something
like that. But I certainly accept that.
13, good.
I certainly
I can live with that. So
I
you accept her amendment?
Absolutely.
And who seconded? You accept the amendment? Okay, so that's on the Reverend.
I also wanted to add, Mr. Chairman, I think we want to be fair in the report that's being given, the greenhouse gas inventory report that has been compiled. We're talking about solar panels on residential houses. She's talking about an entire plan for the entire county.
Correct.
And her plan is really contemplating county office, county buildings, county structures, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that because we as county government can only control those
Right.
pieces, there could potentially be future, ordinances or something that could, affect residents. But yeah, the specific, if we wanted to do solar, that would be on county
but
property.
right now, you're only talking about what you're proposing right now only affects county-operated in buildings.
Right, yeah.
Right. And so I know we're adding some of these other things in the conversation, but they're not what she's doing
No,
right now.
I
Yeah.
understand, and
I
that's,
just wanted to say that, because
Yes, sir.
sometimes we blur things.
Yes, sir.
And it seems like we're considering it all, and it's really not.
And most of us probably, we need to look at maybe a lot of new constructions when we do new constructions to include this in new construction because it'll probably be difficult to go back and do it now with everything that's done. But I don't disagree if we could save, in doing these things for new construction in the future. That's something we ought to look at. I don't disagree with that. Yes, sir. Anybody else? Mr. Sass?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so you'll be you have a plan now, but you're formulating that plan and it'll come back to council. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we don't currently have a plan. The idea would be that we would be using the committee to help formulate and make recommendations to the council for the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Moody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to support this tonight, but my concerns are just like the other ones. We're going to build a big process around things, and it's going to slow things down. So I'm going to, and I appreciate Ms. Honeycutt's motion and Mr. Worman's seconding on that committee. I'm going to support it tonight, but I'd like to meet with you, Ms. Gerstein, get some more information out of you. I think we're just creating more bureaucracy. So, thank you, sir.
Anybody? Reverend Middleton?
I'd also like to add that the governor of the state of South Carolina, who is a Republican, also created an Office of Sustainability for the state of South Carolina, trying to move the state even in this direction, which I think is a good thing to do.
Yeah. You're looking to the future. Okay. So all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to Charleston County.
American University, absolutely.
Oh, wow, but this official welcome. Yeah. You're still on the honeymoon period. Okay, so now we're going to move to 1C. Bill Tunick is going to make a presentation. Good to see you, Mr. Tunick.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to talk to you all about the money that is being allocated to rural broadband. And hold on one second. Okay. And we have two of our rural broadband builders here that are going to talk about what they plan on doing to get broadband, get fiber optics to the homes that don't have it today. We know that's a huge problem, especially post-COVID and during COVID. So I'll start out with an introduction. The state has allocated, the governor signed a bill, H448, on May 13th that allocated $400 million to the state of South Carolina to get fiber optics, to get broadband to unserved or underserved homes. They're moving really quickly on this. The grant applications have opened up, and they're due by the end of August for this money. Now, you all have some criterion the state is going to use to judge who's going to get the build-out money. And the primary criteria, the biggest factor in this is the amount of homes, 100-plus homes that are unserved in a census block. And most of Charleston County, fortunately, has broadband, but in Ms. Johnson's district and Mr. Schweer's district, there's qualified census blocks that could get quite a bit of this money, and our vendors are going to talk about that today. One of the things that's a criteria, you have to be a qualified ISP, Internet Service Provider. This money is not going to be distributed to counties, municipalities, local governments. This goes directly from the state to the ISPs with the municipal and county support. If we support our partners in these build-outs, they have a much better chance in getting the funds. Service required is 100 meg down, 20 meg up. That's pretty hot. That's a lot faster than we all probably have today. It also has to be scalable to 100. That's a requirement. So the state did this, I think, because the funding from the feds via the Infrastructure Act is not going to be available to the end of 23. But there's a huge amount of money coming after the state ARPA funds via the Federal Infrastructure Act. There's a category called the Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment, or BEAD, that's allocating $42 billion to states throughout the nation to build out broadband. So I think at the end of certainly the end of the decade, probably by 2025, 2026, you're going to see ubiquitous coverage of broadband in this country, similar to getting telephones back in the 30s and 40s out to remote houses. This was a requirement to bring the country into the 20th century in that aspect of the 21st century now. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce Palmetto Rural Telephone Cooperative, and they're going to discuss what their build-out plans are, what they're doing right now in Ms. Johnson's district, and talk a little bit about the company first. Here is Valerie Ankro. She's Regulatory Affairs Manager with Palmetto Rural Telephone Cooperative, and following her will be Donnie Colson, who's the Director of Engineering for PRTC.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Council. My task this evening is to tell you just a little bit about Palmetto Rural Telephone Cooperative, also known as PRTC. We have been in existence since 1951. PRTC offers high-speed internet, also known as broadband, TV service, wireless service, security and home automation, and personal computer repair. Wow. This year is the second year that the number of broadband customers have exceeded the number of voice customers. PRTC has proven to be a reliable internet service provider, offering residents and businesses up to 1 gigabit of internet speed, broadband speed. Broadband is an essential part of households today. Someone at the FCC said it best: broadband is no longer a luxury, it is a necessity. I personally could not imagine living in my home without internet service. Right. There are so many unserved areas in South Carolina and the Low Country that it is very important for all of us to work together to get broadband to all households. For PRTC and home telecom, For PRTC and home telecom, that may be Charleston County writing a letter of support, which you all have done in the past. And now I will be followed by Mr. Donnie Colson.
Good evening. I'm Donnie Colson. I do more engineering than I do speaking, so y'all forgive me. Just going to go over a little bit of what we've done so far and what we plan to do in the future. So far, we started building into the lower part, Charleston County, and back in 2014. We built to all the Charleston County school district schools through the Ravenel, Hollywood area. We have expanded since then. That was 40 miles. We have built 100 more miles since then. And we have, you notice at the bottom, there is most of the town of Meggett. We work with them. I've actually passed 700 homes. We'll hit 800 by the end of the year in the Meggett area, which is like, of course, below Hollywood. That area will be covered all in fiber optic cable. Plans to build out further with the grant. I have we're serving several, also serving several residential and commercial areas in the Ravenel and Hollywood area. We have just a little bit more about PRTC. We have built areas using the USDA RUS areas in Colleton County. We have 100% fiber in Colleton County now, except for Edisto Beach. Now we are actually working in Dorchester County in the Gettysville and County Line Road area, which is, of course, borderlines Charleston County. So I'm getting ready to build fiber along those areas. We work with, of course, already working in the environmental with the marsh area, so I use OCRM, of course, and Corps of Engineer permits. We do all directional boring, some plowing, and there again, the ARPA grant is looking at a 2-year, starting in the end of this year in 2022. We're looking at close to 400 miles. And we'll be passing 4,722 houses with this. This is actually, as you see, is kind of a proposal of the areas above Ravenel and in the Hollywood areas. We're also looking at Edisto Island area. There again, we're all buried plant. We are utilizing XGS PON. That's our platform, which is a 10 gig symmetrical PON. That way, we can provide up to 1 gig to each customer. So,
Let me jump in because we're kind
Yeah,
of
I'm sorry.
we're limited on time, Donnie. I'm
Go
just
ahead.
going to kind of summarize a little bit. What you see in the red on the bottom, that's currently built out areas. On the top, that's proposed build out. They plan on applying for state ARPA funds, PRTC, to cover the rest of that area in District 8. On Edisto, the same thing. These are all unserved areas on Edisto Island. And PRTC proposes to build out, based on grant funding, pretty much the remainder of Edisto Island, and that should satisfy a lot of people. There's a huge demand in these rural areas to fill out the broadband to the homes and to the businesses. And I'm going to let Denny Thompson, who's Director of Regulatory Affairs, to quickly summarize what Home Telecom is doing in the northern part of town.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thank y'all for letting us come here. I will be brief and quick. I am Denny Thompson. I'm with Home Telecom. We are headquartered in Monk's Corner. I've been with the company for over 33 years. Home Telephone has been around a little bit longer than my friends at Palmetto Rural. We've been around for 117 years in rural Berkeley County. We employ over 250 employees, and we serve almost 40,000 broadband customers from greenfield developments in Jamesfield, downtown Charleston proper, to Allendale, McClellanville, and then all the way up Interstate 26 to Ridgeville, Harleyville, and around the Volvo plant. The map we have in front of us, we have a shaded area within a shaded area, and I'll talk about the first shaded area, the inner shaded area. That is actually where we are building broadband today. That is being done with a USDA RUS grant called a Reconnect grant, and we are building that today. We're about 60% complete with that grant, and that's going to be passing about 1,200 address points. The area outside, I reckon that's a little bit like a light green area. That area, we believe, does qualify for ARPA money for being unserved area. And that actually would encompass another 1,000 address points. I'm going to echo, I got 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes, and I'll be finished. I'm going to echo Ms. Devon's supply chain issue, because we are seeing supply chain issues across the board too, with some of our critical components at 52 weeks out and some going up to 95 weeks out. The RUS money that will be coming out in waves. So the $400 million that comes out doesn't come out at once. It comes out in waves. And the first round, as Mr. Bill said, is for the unserved areas and the critical need areas of the state. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. If not, thank y'all very much.
Thank you. I'm gonna allow a couple of quick questions, but I gotta get the Queen out because she's got another appointment. So I want to suspend this meeting and then start it back up, because I don't want her to travel all this way without us recognizing her and saying something. So if it's gonna be a long time, I just suspend this and come right back to it. So hold your questions. I want to suspend this, and then we're going to go to our regularly scheduled county council meeting. I'm gonna ask Reverend Middleton to give us a short prayer, and then I'm gonna ask Mr. Smalls to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'm gonna get the Queen right on out. Come on out, Queen. Reverend, go right ahead, sir.
Let us pray. God, we just thank you, we praise you, and we magnify your name. We ask, God, that you rule, super rule, and just superintend this meeting. We thank you for our chairperson, our county administrator, everyone, our county council members, everyone within the county government employee. We ask, God, that you continue to help us to just unite Charleston County and to do those things that lift up our citizens. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 1 is the Freedom of Information Act. What is the pleasure?
In compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meeting and agendas were posted and furnished to news media and persons requesting notification.
Item number 2 minutes.
Second.
All right, any additions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Item number 3 is the Gullah Geechee
Move to
resolution.
approve.
Second.
Second by Ms. Honeycutt, moved by Reverend Middleton. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Queen, I know you ain't meant to leave here and don't say nothing, so I mean, how you can leave me like that?
How you gonna do me like this, y'all?
When they tell me, that's when I come to you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How honor to do?
I'm doing fine, thank
Don't
the
start all
Lord.
the arguing up in here now.
No, you already done win.
People, yeah.
No, I ain't gonna show off.
I know the whole of Charleston, which I come over regular, so y'all get through this thing, y'all. Y'all moved just now.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, I mean.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
ma'am.
Well,
The
thank
floor is yours, Queen.
So, oh, y'all ain't gonna read them tonight or nothing. Y'all could get
Don't
ready
read it
now
for me.
truth.
Read it for
Yes,
my
sir. Tell him the Robert's Rule of Order.
A resolution of Charleston County Council proclaiming the week of July 30th through August 6, 2022 as Gullah Geechee Nation Appreciation Week. Whereas Charleston County is one of the oldest counties in South Carolina, and in the 18th century, Charleston County and the South Carolina coast became the locale of some of the richest rice plantations in the South, which were linked to specific West African ethnic groups who became known as Gullah Geechee. And whereas the Gullah Geechee civilization originated in West Africa, its people coming to the United States as slaves to work on rice plantations, specifically in the coastal regions, including South Carolina, and with their African fare, original language, and craftsmanship, the Gullah Geechee people left their mark on southeastern South Carolina. And whereas the Gullah Geechee culture has had a powerful impact on the low country of South Carolina, including Charleston County, and these Gullah Geechee influences have helped to define our Southern lifestyle and culture. And whereas the preservation and celebration of the Gullah Geechee culture has gained momentum due to the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Act, created by United States Representative James Clyburn, as well as the efforts of others such as Queen Quet, chiefess of the Gullah Geechee Nation, and Kwame Shah, co-founders of the International Gullah Geechee Nation Celebration and the annual Gullah Geechee Nation Music and Movement Festival. And whereas Queen Quet has served as the official head Pundabadi and spokesperson for Gullah Geechees since July 2nd, 2000. And whereas the 22nd anniversary of the Gullah Geechee Nation is being celebrated under the theme Disha Who We Be, celebrating the Gullah Geechee living legacy. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the importance of bringing awareness and appreciation for this rich culture and history in order to increase understanding of all the contributions the Gullah Geechee cultural heritage have given to our area and the sustainability of the Gullah Geechee Nation. Now therefore be it resolved that Charleston County Council does hereby proclaim the week of July 30th through August 6, 2022 as Gullah Geechee Nation Appreciation Week in Charleston County and encourages its citizens to celebrate the Gullah Geechee Nation under the theme Disha Who We Be, celebrating the Gullah Geechee living legacy, and support Gullah Geechee businesses and institutions. Charleston County Council, Teddy E. Pryor Sr., Chairman.
You see that?
Thank you,
I
sir.
want you to put that on the wall so you can look at my signature every time you walk by that, okay?
Better
I
than
mean,
to
that
look
way
at
you
your-
remember me.
That better than to look at on a picture then every
Yeah,
time.
that's right. I ain't
look
want no
at the
picture. I want you to remember me. by that
Okay,
signature,
I
okay?
remember that.
All right,
I
go
ain't
ahead.
no problem.
The floor is yours.
And all love, all love. Thank you to all of Charleston County. One more again this year. And rather was, I glad for yet it as Sustainability Day in the proclamation, because you just crack your teeth, but that thing, and that a thing that I to work on plenty time. So if I can help on the children up here with them, I help all around the world with them at the UN and all that kind of thing. And I own the South Carolina Office of Resiliency. I own the Cultural Resources Committee for that. So if I can help on the children here in Charleston, please call upon me for that too.
Yes,
okay?
ma'am.
Not just for you argue with me, chill, and things like that. But I appreciate all of you for all of the comers. I can speak your language as well. And we want you to know that if you follow GullahGeecheeNation.com, at Gullah Geechee on Twitter, Instagram, Gullah Geechee Nation on TikTok, you have all the details for Gullah Geechee Nation Appreciation Week. We'll be launching it in my home county, Beaufort County. Gullah Geechee Family Day is July 30th. Bring a busload of y'all from Charleston. I either bring busload up here. Y'all can bring some busload down we way. And we will be having that on St. Helena Island at noon. So it's for the entire global Gullah Geechee family that we know the roots started right here in Charleston County. And we trying to keep them roots strong so that generations more of us will be here. Because we the Binya and we in the Guayna with Tall. Thank you, y'all.
All right, now come on up here and take the picture with Ms. Johnson. Well, thank you. But I'm gonna get in the middle right here.
Yeah, get right here.
All right.
Let me turn them up. I can learn y'all how to do this thing, yeah.
So we thank you for coming over and visiting with us one more time. Thank you, and for all the work that you're doing.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Get the queen good now. Now you can look at the picture and the signature, so you all right. Thank you. We love you, okay? We love you.
too.
All right, thank you, thank you,
y'all
thank
so
you.
much. I can Photoshop you out that picture though.
All right now, see, you're supposed to be my friend.
You know I just believe.
Thank you, Queen. We love you. All right, so now we're going to suspend this meeting and go back to our special finance where we will take questions. Mr. Sway's at his hand first. Can I go to Reverend Middleton?
Quick question
Yes,
for home telephone. Can we go back to the map that you had up? The light blue area, that's pretty much the Highway 17 corridor. The lighter green area, a lot of that's to Francis Marion, where actually no people live. And in some areas, very, very few people live. Is the goal to serve every house, or is there a line you draw somewhere that says, okay, we can't serve one house that's 10 miles away, and that's the only house? How does that work?
When we apply for the grants, we apply to serve every house within that census block. Yes, every house within the census blocks. If without the grant, there's not a business case to serve, that customer that lives a mile and a half off that, path road.
Right, okay. I would actually kind of disagree with that philosophy, but I won't get in the way of the grant. And y'all have orange conduit all over the area. I live out that way.
Yes, sir.
Y'all have orange conduit everywhere, which is great to see. Y'all are doing a great job, and I look forward to everyone being served. So yeah, I will support y'all going for the grant. Thank you. Sure.
Okay, all right, Reverend Middleton.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and to the presenters, this is absolutely vital, a program that is needed, specifically in those rural areas. I do also know that there are internal areas like Rosemount, which is in, we would consider that to be, a city sort of confined, but they're so northern or in between Charleston and North Charleston that they have been also left out. And so there are pockets within urban areas or the urban growth boundary that probably also need to be contemplated. So I know that Home Telecom, I'm very familiar with you all. PRTC, do you all also provide telephone, internet, all of those type things as a service? And so when all of this broadband is taken out to those various areas, individuals can then choose Verizon or AT&T, or they just stick with the providers that are laying out the fiber in that area?
Well, there is competition, but usually the fiber provider wins because they have the fastest service at the most cost-effective price. But as you know, as you said, Verizon's offering a fixed service. There's Starlink, which is a Elon Musk deal that just cut over service in Charleston County. We have a couple dishes. They work very well. They're expensive. They're twice as much as a fiber-based provider. So fiber usually wins in that scenario.
And then lastly, I do know that we had Tri-County Cradle to Career. Being an educator myself, when, especially during the pandemic, we recognized that when students were sent home or they had to learn from home, that we recognized that even with the mobile hotspots, it was insufficient, for learning at home. And so Tri-County Cradle to Career proposed also providing program, not the fiber optics and, creating the build out, but how do we address those providers within the nonprofit world, opportunities to help cultivate other activities around these grant funds? I know that this is just for build out, but there are those monies also talk about, sort of engagement and, the overall education of communities, as it relates to, the broadband being in their area, the high-speed internet being in their area. So how do we now address those who have approached us with projects and programs to optimize internet in those areas?
Well, I think we already got some funding set aside for that, but and when they bring the cables and optics, I think, I might be wrong, but I think we had about $5 to $6 million set aside to address what you were talking
Just for
about.
that?
To get it, yeah, the
Okay.
program, different program.
Thank you very much.
Yes, okay. All right, Ms. Johnson?
Yes, I have a question for PRTC. I think you all said that you were covering about 4,722 houses
Yes, ma'am, with that build out.
with the build-out?
That would be passing 4,722 houses.
And so you're starting where, because we have people in, the Adams Run area that did a survey around 2019 or 2020, and they're really looking for you all to come in that area. So I just want to know where you're starting.
Well, like I said, right now, we have a major fiber ring already in place. It's been there since 2014, so starting points could be anywhere. I mean, if it's the need is Adams Run, I would go there first because I have facilities in place to build off my ring.
All right, so how do you decide, where you're going to start first? Because I thought we were told that you were going to survey the areas to see who were ready to join in as far as connecting.
Well, with the grant, we would go whatever area I want to start at. We would start there. We did, my design's already done. I would just go in there and what we call staking out the area. Then I get the contractors starting to build. Like Denny, I'll say with material cost and lead times, I've been trying to purchase as much materials ahead of time, so should not be any delay. I know with the grant itself, you cannot start until 12/30/2022, so construction would start first of the year.
If you could just send me some information on the census block that's in the area that is qualified.
And
I'd like to know that.
Before we go, I can build out a timeline showing what areas
Okay.
in construction all the way to actually to installation.
All right, I appreciate all the work that you all have been doing. I know we've been trying to get you to come in the area a long time.
Been working on it.
When you send that information, it'll be easier to send it to the clerk, and then she can distribute it to each council member. So send it to the clerk,
I will.
okay? And then she'll send it out to everybody so they'll have it.
Yes, I definitely.
Mr. Moody?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is any action needed tonight? I know Ms. Johnson's been talking about this since I've been on council. I know this is she's very passionate about it, but
Well-
it's just applications are due August 31. They need to get going. If they need a motion to council, we need to give it to them, I think.
Okay. All right, so we just send a support letter. If everybody's in agreement, I think that's what they're asking for. We don't need a motion for that. We'll just send
a
it.
resolution, I would imagine.
Whatever kind of they come up with, and, I just sign it, we can send it on in. Okay? Yes, sir. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. You good, Bill?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Okay, the quicker y'all get that done, the faster we get it sent off.
Got it.
All right, thank you. Okay, now, item number 2 is my appointment to the Board of Zoning and Appeals. The young lady that I had moved to Dorchester County, I think, or Berkeley County, so she contacted me, and so I have this appointment, who is A.D. Jordan, a former county council and city council member.
Move for approval.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Now, we move to item 3A, Housing Steering Committee update. Who's going to get that? Josh Dix. All right, come on. All right. You want to do it from here, or you want to do it from the podium? You got
Here, if that's
Okay.
okay with everyone else?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks for having me. I'm Josh Dix. I'm the Government Affairs Director for the Realtors Association. I also serve as the Chairman of the Housing Steering Committee. We've been working since March when y'all stood up this committee to identify a funding stream and then develop a plan for addressing the housing shortfall that we see here. Housing in Charleston County consistently is over $500,000 per unit right now. Inventory is at an all-time low. We're right at a month's worth of supply. a good market would, or a healthy market would be about 6 months worth of supply. So we need some help, some government intervention to help the private sector out to address some of the housing needs that we're seeing out in the market. Through the Housing Committee, we've been looking at the shortfall. We would need about $450 million just to address 80% AMI and below over the next decade. We would need $170 million to address 80 to 120 AMI over the next decade. Prices continue to escalate. Wages are not keeping pace. So we tried to weigh all these options, looking at a responsible way to address all these things. And what we ultimately landed on was recommending to council a $3 million increase that we would send to the voters in November to decide whether or not they want to engage in a housing fund going forward. Now that equates to about $12 per $100,000 of assessed value. And I know we're tight on time, so I don't want to drag this out too long, but I'm happy to talk about what the committee has been doing, answer any questions that we may have, or address any concerns that y'all have. But the $3 million recommendation is what comes out of committee today.
Yeah, all right, and so a $2 million would be about $8?
Yes, sir, $8. It equates to about $1 million is $4 per $100,000.
All right, any questions for Mr. Dix from this body?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it probable or practical that county council could just, in its own, by its own will, just do this as opposed to putting it on a referendum or out to voters?
We can, but I always like to give the voters a chance to weigh in before we make that decision. And if the voters doesn't do it and this body wants to do it, then we can take it up after the election. But I do want to give the public a chance. I think the public has a right to say yea or nay.
Certainly, I always feel that way.
Yes, sir. But you are correct. If all other fields, this body can, do that if they so desire, if 5 people wants to do that. Okay? All right, Reverend, Mr. Moody.
Reverend Moody.
I keep wanting you to be a preacher for some reason.
It's never too late.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Diggs, thank you for your comments. Walk me through the math real quickly, and then I've got a few other questions. So $1 million is $4, so times it's every 100,000.
So it would be assessed on the home value. So
$500,000 home.
You're talking about a $60 annual bill.
Okay. That's what I had. Because we talked about last time it was $300,000, and obviously prices have escalated.
Correct.
Rapidly.
I mean, we would have to see. I'm just using on what the last year's worth of home values have been. Currently we're about, for Charleston County, $575,000 is the year to date where we are.
Okay. This council recently set aside $20 million without a plan yet. But why would we, from your position, from CTAR and from your committee, how do we go to the public and say, well, we've already done $20 million, but we want another annuity? How do you make that sale?
Sure. The ARPA money is one-time money. Yep. It's not recurring. This would be recurring funds. How y'all want to spend that is up to you, whether it's bonding or pay as you go over 20 years. But you have to look at it as when this passes on November 8th, 2023, we go into the assessment period. 2024 is collection. 2025 is when the money finally becomes available. So the $20 million of ARPA money, it basically keeps us in the housing program. We can develop some procedures and practices to refine it. And so when we go to allocate the money in 2025, we've been able to build and sustain housing and preserve housing in between then. There's no gap between now and when that money becomes available.
When does it end? When does the money train stop?
Well,
if ever.
Well, yes, sir. I mean, we are in an infinite cycle. the cost of land continues to skyrocket. Material costs are going up by the day. Monetary policy is impacting us. We cannot keep up. We are not getting enough relief. We are an economy that attracts people, which is great, but we don't have enough inventory to meet the needs that we currently are seeing. And so from an economic development point of view, we are becoming, housing is becoming a liability. We are not attractive to a global search. We're losing to Nashville, to Austin, to areas that have a housing fund, areas that can build housing. We are not in a position to be competitive. And if we want to continue being competitive and be a global standard, we need some help. We need an intervention.
So you were here last week. I think you were scheduled to speak, and we went long, and I think Chairman wisely punted you today. You heard the resiliency report that came out. You're saying a $3 million increase. How much does that need to go up if all of the recommendations from that resiliency committee were to pass as presented?
I would have to look at it issue by issue, but just to meet the needs for a 20-year period, we would need probably a $9 million increase just to meet the needs. That doesn't take into consideration any resiliency plans or elements or anything of that need. So you're talking about exponential addition. I can't factor that off the top of my head, but just to meet the need, we would need 9 mills.
The need that your committee's talking about?
Correct, yes, sir.
And then you would layer in anything the resiliency committee and then go from there?
Yes,
go
sir.
up from there?
Yes, sir.
So those are clearly in conflict with each other, I think, on a number of issues.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can get into that with the ZLDR conversation, but yes, we need to take into consideration anything that's going to impact housing.
Thank you, Mr. Dix, for your time.
Yes, sir.
I wrestle with this, Mr. Chairman. I've had my position well known, but not putting things for the voters is not wise either. I wouldn't support it. I don't think at this point. I'm willing to listen, but putting things before the voters is always a wise move. So I'm willing to hear what everybody else has got to say.
Okay, Mr. Swears.
Mr. Dix, you're encouraging 3 mills now. How much does that raise per year in Charleston County?
You're talking about roughly $12 million a year.
$12 million a year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the number of years, you are recommending this be a 20-year plan?
That's historically what would be offered. That was what the plan was in 2020. Was the life period was 20 years.
Okay, I'll hold my comments till the next agenda item.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Dix.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now we move into 3B, housing referendum question wording. Okay, so do I need to go to the attorney so she can read it, or somebody wants to read what she's?
Can we put it up on the screen?
Yes, we should have it, so we can see the wording, because, since it came through legal, if any questions we need to ask the attorney, we can add in or take out, but this is what she proposed.
So just to educate council just a little bit, there is statutory regulations with regards to the language of referendums. So my office took into account what the committee was recommending and tried to fill in some of the things that they were requesting with some additional detail, but still staying aligned with the statutory provisions for referendum language. And this is what has come out. Obviously, the committee did have very specific recommendations on the amount and the time frame, but because I wasn't quite exactly sure what those were. I had their notes. I put blanks in those so that council can make the decision with regards to how they want to fill out the language.
Okay, Mr. Swears?
Okay, along those lines, Ms. Ham, the first question does not have a time frame. I'm assuming the first question could pass and the second question could fail. But the first question does not have a time frame.
That is correct.
Okay, but we can add one.
You could. This is just a draft based on A, what was utilized the last time this was put forth to the public, and B, what the recommendation of the committee was.
Okay, much like Mr. Moody said, I do have a hard time not allowing the public to decide, okay? But I will give my personal opinions. we do have an opportunity for $20 million of federal money, which is all of our money, but nonetheless, it's in the form of federal money. Right now, it looks like $20 million. So that's a couple years of housing from the get-go, okay? And I know that if the program is hugely successful after a couple years, I would be much more inclined to support such a thing. But for us to commit to $20 million of federal money and 20 years of county taxpayer money, regardless of our success or failure rate, I won't vote for that. I will say I will not vote for that. I think this council would be wiser not to have the referendum this year, but have it in 2 years when we have a track record, when we have a plan for one thing, which we still don't have, and the election is not that far away. We still don't have a good plan. Hopefully we will get a good plan, but we'll have 2 years to prove it. If we don't prove it in 2 years, then I dread to think we're going to be 20 years of this with a plan that the voters regret, and that we had an opportunity to do a trial run for 2 years before we bound ourselves to 20 additional years. So again, I typically will support something being on a referendum versus right now, I won't vote for this, and I won't encourage anyone else. I know I can't campaign for it or against it as a county council member, but I'm saying right now, I won't vote for this.
Yeah.
Even though it might be on the referendum.
Vicky swears, but not as given the the public a chance.
And I assume, Ms. Ham, I can say that right now, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve a $2 million for the referendum.
Is there a second to her motion?
My hand up
Yeah.
long before the motion was made.
All right, let me go to Mr. Melton, if you will, please. Reverend Melton, go right ahead.
Since she's already started the motion,
All right, is there a second to her motion so we can discuss? I'll second it for discussion. Ms. Honeycutt, you finish?
Yes, sir.
Now, Reverend Middleton.
I wanted to talk about the draft that we have in front of us, and I think it's as thin as it was the first time it was presented to voters in the referendum. And I think that we are running the risk of almost the same mistake twice. I think the referendum itself needs much more specificity based on what Mr. Swears just said. We need a plan, and when I've seen other referenda placed on ballots to include from schools, from the school district, et cetera, they have pages and pages and pages that also, denote, who, what, where, when, and how, as it relates to what they're asking voters to commit themselves to. Just asking questions, one or two, I would say no to that too, without knowing specifically. It's almost like a blank check without a plan. And, this is exactly what we did a few years ago, and it did not yield the results. It narrowly failed, and so it then said to us that we needed to improve this process. This is not an improvement on the process that we failed at just a few years ago.
Okay, Miss, let me ask you this question. What is the deadline? We got to have this, the voters,
The election commission.
By what, August 31st?
I believe that's correct.
August 15th.
August 15th. Okay, so let me write that down. August 15th.
We don't even meet again by then.
But we've always
Right now,
known
we're
that.
scheduled.
We've always
Well, I can
known
call it.
that. I mean, this is not.
All right, so, okay, all right, Ms. Honeycutt?
Okay, we have a consultant. I don't believe that Mr. Dix was in a position to talk about what the consultant is going to recommend. What is the timeline, and why weren't they here to present when this came to us?
Thank you, Ms. Honeycutt.
So, Ms., when can the consultant be here?
As it stands now, the consultant is putting the framework together as they committed to do. In August, I believe you're going to be seeing more of that framework. That is the construct, but there was no way, based on when the consultant started and the deadline for you all to submit ballot language, that it could align to get that done before you had to make this decision. So there are two different processes, really.
Mr. Chair.
The consultant is still working with the Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization staff to put together a comprehensive plan that will go to the steering committee and then will then come to council for recommendation.
And Mr. Dix, can I call Mr. Dix back? Can you please provide a little bit of insight into where you think the organization and our steering committee can, what the plan is to inform voters so that this makes sense when it comes up on a ballot, if it comes up this year?
Yes, ma'am. We had recommended, putting some additional language such as, this would, assuming it's a 3 mil, let's just use that for an example, that would be $12 per $100,000. So we had added a couple of additional facts towards the questions 1 and 2 and how that language was presented. As far as timeline, our committee meets tomorrow. We're meeting with the consultant to discuss how the framework will be packaged and put together. We hope to be sending material to y'all bit by bit over the next period. September will be a busy time for us as we're doing the public engagements and charrettes, getting the feedback from the public on how the plan should be packaged and presented, so that when y'all receive the draft, to my understanding, end of September, early October, that all those issues would be identified and clarified and given an appropriate response and addressed in an appropriate way.
And Ms. Ham, you're saying the last day the Election Commission can have the final language is August 31st?
August 15th.
August 15th.
Okay, let me go to Mr. Swears and then Reverend Middleton.
Mr. Durant, if we do spend the $20 million on affordable housing that we talked about, this federal money, how many years would we have to spend that?
If it's committed, you have to commit it until by December of '24, and then you have until the end of '26 to spend it. That's the way the ARPA language is
So
written.
3-4 years.
Yes.
Okay, and then if we postpone this referendum 2 years, when could money generated from that referendum be put in circulation? I guess my point is, we can take the 20 million, we can divide it into 3, do 7 million a year for 3 years, and that would get us to a referendum 2 years from now and potential funding to continue our very successful track record that we've established at that time. But to commit to 20 years, we don't even have a plan right now. And to commit to 20 years, I think, is a very serious mistake. I mean, I was thinking even, well, maybe we do 5 years. Maybe we do a 5-year plan. And if we're doing great, it'll slide right through 5 years later. But to do a 20-year plan, I think, is a huge risk. We're not the most successful business people ever in Charleston County here. We've made some mistakes. Let's don't let this be another one.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. And to council members, we've known about this August 15th deadline since I've been on council. And I think, Mr. Swears, you've been my mentor, so to speak, my buddy right here. You normally whisper things to me. And when these conversations, good things, when these things came up, you said a couple of years ago, well, you have until August 15th. So that's how we always knew that date. When the RFP went out for the consultants, it was a part of that, unless I'm mistaken or somehow I'm blind or dumb, it was a part of that RFP that they were to come up with language and or whatever for a referendum question. I do feel that we have a housing committee, on council, and certainly we could have met as the housing committee every single time committees were called to meet, so that we could, and I'm not saying one thing or another, to make certain that we were on track to have all of these things in place, so that when we come down to this point, we would have a specified plan that was consensus driven as it relates to council, and we all would have had an opportunity to give input that we would feel good enough, to turn this thing loose for advocacy groups to go out and really beat the drum on it. And right now, we are now up against almost a month deadline with a very thin two-part question that I wouldn't even support, personally. I would not. And so even bringing the consultants in at this time, we've now been told that they will not have enough time. I mean, did you just not say that based on, if we brought them in to present to us in the August meeting, they've been working on housing stuff, so they have not been spending a whole lot of time on the referendum piece, and they would not have a referendum question sufficient enough, for this cycle?
Let me clarify, Reverend Middleton. At no point would the consultant be constructing the question. We would let our legal department do that. That was not part of the RFP. What the consultant has been tasked to do is to bring together a comprehensive plan of which there are numerous tools from which council can choose in a toolkit to both implement and fund the Affordable Housing Initiative. So the way the RFP was written, it asked for them in each of the elements to put together in this plan 4 or 5 tools that you all could choose from, or that the committee could choose from, and then recommend to council to implement. So it's a broader statement for what they will bring.
When I personally met with the consultants, and you were on Zoom or wherever, they told me in that meeting that they were working on frameworks, and I know the attorney, that office comes up with the questions itself, but they had some part in that. Even the committee, as they were working with the committee, they were meeting with the committee to generate, these kind of conversations. So what have they been working on with the committee all of this time in reference to the bond question? I'm done.
All right. Ms. Honeycutt.
Sorry for us ping-ponging back and forth here. But I think all of us up here realize how important this is to the community. We absolutely have to get this on the ballot this year. And so I realize that we have a plan that needs to be refined before we can actually vote on this. We need a little bit more refinement in this language. I don't disagree with that. And so I would ask Mr. Chairman that we have a special meeting before this August 15th deadline, that we can vote on a refined version of this so that it can get on this year's ballot. If we can do that, I will withdraw my motion.
I've already got a date down. That's why I was searching the calendar. So let me go back again to make sure that I don't put the wrong date down. 'Cause that's what I was doing when everybody else was talking. Okay, so when you withdraw your motion, then I'm gonna have a special meeting August the 11th. Be a special finance and county council meeting, so we can take this on. And, that'll give us, because the 15th is that Monday, so they'll be able to take it to them between that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then give it to them Monday morning.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
As we prepare for that August 11th date, and thank you, Ms. Honeycutt, will there be constructive, collaborative processes between now and then, so that we're just not coming up here like we're doing today?
That's what I'm going to recommend.
Because we just can't come up and be discussing it on the 11th, right?
I think staff has heard that, and the consultant, we paid them, so I guess you have to call them and tell them we need this by whatever input they got, the week before August the 11th, so y'all can work it out and then get it out to council. So when we come in, we won't come in blindsided. We'll have something that we've already studied. And so if y'all can do that, I would appreciate it. And Mr. Swears, I like what you said. We may, can go 5 or 10 years, and then if it's successful, go back. But I'll think about that. That makes a lot of sense, what you said with the 20 million, and then 5 years, if it's successful, somebody else can take the torch and move it, or we can do 10 years. And if it's successful in 10 years, then they can do another 10. So sometime when you discuss things, you get a better view of it. So I like that. Okay, now, you want to talk, sir? Go ahead.
I do have a request. As y'all know, I have the longest commute to get to these meetings of anybody, but I suggest we not, in August, have a committee meeting, vote, and then immediately have a council meeting, vote again. I suggest we split those Thursday, Tuesday, just to give time in between to ponder what we've discussed.
Okay.
Tuesday.
What about August the 9th for special finance, and then August the 11th for a county council meeting?
It's fine, just at least a couple of days in between.
All right, so everybody check your calendar and make sure you don't have a conflict. Because once we set this date, then we moving forward if you're here or not. This is very important.
Do we want to set a time for both of those?
Yeah, both of
meetings
these
as well?
meetings, does anybody have a problem meeting at 5 o'clock? Okay, if the traffic is bad, we can do it to 6, but at 5 o'clock, I think we get in and get out. Okay, so here's what we'll do. On August the 9th, we'll have a special finance committee meeting to discuss this. And then August the 11th, we'll have a special county council meeting. But I will say, if we can't get nothing done by then with the consultants, then you probably won't have a referendum. Because I'm not going in blind and expect the taxpayers to just give us carte blanche without having specifics. So that is very important, Madam Attorney and Ms. Durant, to relate to the consultants. Whatever they got now, let them give it to us. It shouldn't take that long for them to come out with questions that needs to be in guarantees, that needs to be put, work along with Mr. Dixon, his group. I think that shouldn't take that long.
My role is to solely make sure that those questions align with the statutory provisions so that we don't get the county into a
Okay.
situation where we have to litigate over the language.
No problem, because I'm sure somebody has done this before and on a website somewhere else, so we need to go ahead and, and maybe search the internet and see who's got a housing referendum, and maybe we can extract language from that. Okay? All right.
That's
So,
exactly
Rev-
the same thing I was just about to say.
Okay, all right, so we got some homework to do, and so between that, we might have to work some overtime Saturdays and Sundays to get it done, but it is what it is. This council wants it, and I don't blame them. We need to get it done the way we have the exact information that is going to appear. And if the voters say yes, fine. If they say no, that's fine. Ms. Johnson?
I just want to remind us that according to Mr. Dix, he's recommending 3%, 3 mills. And when this came before us the last time, it was 2 mills and was turned down because of the plan. I think we discussed a summary of not having a plan for the money that we were asking
Right.
for. So now here we are again. We're talking about even going up to 3%. 3 mills, more than.
Well, that's up to this council to decide.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I'm just stating
ma'am.
my point right now,
Yes, ma'am.
because I know we didn't take a vote, but I'm very concerned about even increasing that amount. So I just want to put that on the table before we come back.
You must remember too, Mount Pleasant is gonna have something on the referendum too, to fund recreation. So that must be a consideration too, when you're going from 2 to 3. You don't want to burden these people, especially in a downsized economy now, coming off of the pandemic, and gas prices as high as it is. And my concern is those folks, what if a house is from 0 to $99,999, they don't get taxed, or they get taxed with the $12 if it's 2 mills, $8 if it's 2 mills. That's yeah. So in order for a house to be assessed at mills, it would have to be over 100. It'd have to be $100,001, correct?
100,000.
No, that's just the.
$4.
That's the portion, yeah, because, so a house at 50,000 is gonna pay $4.
$2.
No, half of 8 is 4. Yeah. And
I
that's my concern too. We gotta consider, people on fixed income. $12 might not be much to me or you or somebody else, but we must consider that as well too. Because the reason I say that is most of the time the poor people end up paying the brunt of this stuff even though they don't benefit from it. So we must make sure that the underserved is going to benefit from this as well too. So, we're going to take all that into consideration. And if we have to rush it and screw it up, count me out. But if it's done right, I support it 100%. And once that's over with, we cannot sell it or we cannot advocate for it. But y'all can. Okay.
Can I just get Ms. Durant to address
Yes.
her concern?
Yes, ask the question.
Yeah. Ms. Durant, I see you having some consternation over there. What is your concern?
Yeah. And tell us the hard fact truth, okay? That's what I want to hear. Don't sugarcoat it.
Well, I'm trying not to with that.
Yeah,
The consultant was not given the direction, nor do I expect that they will come back and say, this is the only way to fund it. They are tasked to come back with alternatives of how to fund a sustainable, affordable housing fund, not necessarily just via a referendum. So the direction to deal with just the referendum would change the scope of what their plan is. So I want to make sure for council's benefit before we leave to make that happen, that I'm completely transparent with what they are doing, which a referendum could be part of their plan, but it is not necessarily their plan. There are other mechanisms around the nation that are used also.
Mr. Chair?
Hold on, I saw Mr. Werman, and then I'll come back to you. I'm sure we got smart enough people that can work with this and do it if the consultant doesn't have any recommendation strictly on this. Like I said, there should be a blueprint somewhere on the internet that we can follow that's successful. I mean, Greenville and Spartanburg has done this, and has been successful. So
We will absolutely carry out your direction,
yes,
no
ma'am.
doubt.
All right, Mr. Werman.
Well, listen, I share a lot of folks' concerns here. I am hesitant to turn down an opportunity for funding for housing, given the mountain that we apparently have to climb, not thanks to Mr. Dix, but as noted by Mr. Dix. But I do think what we're probably doing here seems like a good idea, and what I would maybe just offer up and think if this is feasible is, the way this sort of incorporates the consultant's work, as I read it, is it basically refers to the plan that they'd be presenting in September. What I may be hearing from council, and I would tend to agree with this, is the more we can make that explicit rather than just sort of a reference. I mean, a lot of folks aren't going to, the first time a lot of folks see this is potentially going to be the time that they're in the ballot box. So I think we probably have a fairly good idea of the direction that that's going, as far as items that would be some of those tools in the toolbox. There seems to be an implication that we'd be targeting folks 0 to 120% AMI. I mean, those are the types of details that I think are folks up here, and I would tend to agree that if that can be made more clear to the voters, I'm not totally sure how much we need to change the direction of what the consultants are doing. Just project where that's going and put some of those details in the ballot. That's not a directive from anyone, obviously, but just an idea to maybe sort of bridge the gap, because I know that a lot of work has certainly been done, and I don't want that to not be reflected come November.
Thank you, Reverend Middleton.
I was going to say something similar, to include the fact that the consultants, based on the broad net of options that they were eventually going to provide us, they were also going to provide something along the line of a referendum option. And they have been meeting with groups or committees relative to that. And so I'm simply asking, certainly this could not be the sum total of their work. It has to be more than that the groups that they've been meeting with have provided them. And so that's all I'm asking, not a new scope or not an additional, part of the work that we're asking them to do, but just extracting from all of their collaborative conversations and intentional meetings that portion or that bucket that only deals with the referendum piece, and to give us the best practices on that now.
Okay. All right, so this item is, we ain't gonna take no action. It'll be moved to August the 9th, okay, at 5 p.m. All right, so we now going to move to public hearings. I think we got a number of them, so I'm gonna just turn over to Ms. Salisbury.
Yes, sir. Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, July 12th, regarding an ordinance to amend the portion of the Charleston County Code of Ordinances pertaining to fees in the Emergency Medical Services Department.
Okay, do we have any speakers sign up for that?
We have Mr. Bryant.
All right, Mr. Anthony G. Brown.
This is definitely necessary in terms of folk who really dealing with some real serious issues with the economy right now. But what I did witness, I gave Christian Salisbury, our fine clerk, 2 letters that you can take a look at, one to the Department of Justice in terms of emergency service under Title VI. person can file a complaint or any retaliation from a recipient or grantee. Well, I went to the court, the district court, to observe something, and a person in county jail filed a complaint for emergency services against Charleston County Jail and MUSC before a federal judge. Basically, you need to find out what's going on in there in terms of these complaints that they're filing. Cruel, unusual punishment, the Eighth Amendment. And I don't support the Eighth. I don't support anybody filing the Eighth Amendment, no matter what. So that's going on. And after that, you had 2 officer-involved incidents in the jail. So that was like June 27th. I was at there, doing my work, and I did this for 3 years, going to bond courts, checking out the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. By and large, with 10,000 students in this county district referred for disciplinary actions, many will probably have needs emergency services at some point, and their parents don't have any money. This will be good. This is an Eighth Amendment concern to this body.
Thank you. Anybody else? Next public hearing.
Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, July 12th regarding an ordinance, amending an ordinance number 2008, authorizing an exclusive franchise for the collection of solid waste from households in unincorporated areas of Charleston County to add the town of Ravenel to the franchise area.
Anybody signed up for that? Okay. Any questions? Next.
Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing on a rezoning request at 3287 Ladson Road.
Anybody signed up for that?
Yes. We have Mr. Bryant.
We normally do the presentation.
So do we have a presentation on this? Okay. That's sweet. Do the presentation.
Good evening.
After she's finished, we'll call you up.
This is a request to rezone 3287 Ladson Road from the General Office Zoning District to the Community Commercial Zoning District. The current property boundaries of this parcel were established in 2016 when a 1.06 acre portion of TMS 390-000080 were combined via deed with the original 0.95 acres of TMS 390 parcel 83, bringing the total property acreage to 2.01 acres. At the time of combination, both properties were zoned general office. In 1999, the 0.95 acre parcel was zoned AI, agricultural industrial, and the 1.06 acre portion was zoned general office. With the adoption of the 2001 zoning ordinance, this subject property was zoned general office. And prior to this request, there have been no other rezoning requests for this property. On the left, you can see how the property was configured in 2006, with the property boundaries shown in yellow. The current property boundaries are in blue here, and on the right is the current plat for the property. Here is the location of the subject property when looking at the county as a whole. The subject parcel has 2 future land use designations. The 0.95 acre street frontage portion of the property is designated as a commercial future land use, whereas the remainder of the property has a civic institutional future land use. The subject parcel contains a vacant single-family residence, and properties to the north across Ladson Road are zoned community commercial, general office, or industrial, and contain a church or are undeveloped. Properties to the west are zoned general office and contain an accountant's office or are undeveloped. And the property to the south is also zoned general office and is undeveloped. Property to the east of this parcel is within the city of North Charleston, zoned light industrial, and is also undeveloped. Here's an aerial view of the area looking to the west and to the east. These are photos of the subject parcel. as well as surrounding properties. This slide shows a comparison of the allowed land uses in the current GO zoning and the proposed CC zoning. As it was discussed earlier, the subject parcel has 2 future land use designations. So that 0.95 acre street frontage portion with the commercial FLU and the remainder of the property that has that civic institutional future land use. The proposed rezoning to CC allows for civic uses. It also allows for a variety of retail, service, employment, and commercial uses beyond the recommendation of the civic institutional future land use designation. Additionally, the proposed amendment is not compatible with existing uses, recommended density, dimensional standards, and zoning of surrounding properties. To the north, west, and south, the property is bounded by GO zoning, and existing uses include that professional office, a school, and a church. The property to the east, of course, as I mentioned, is zoned light industrial within the city of North Charleston. However, it is undeveloped. Staff and Planning Commission have both recommended disapproval of this request. We have not received any public input concerning this, and this meeting was noticed as required. Thank you.
Do you know what they're proposing to put in on the property if it's rezoned?
Do not, however, the property owner is here.
Okay. We'll ask them, where's the property owner? All right, so what are you proposing to put on that?
I'm planning on keeping the property is general office in the very front of it. The line was right there. And I wanted to see if y'all would approve to put the line back right under 35 feet behind the general office where I could do flex space.
I mean, flex space, explain that.
Flex space is general office warehouse combinations.
Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you for that explanation. You'll have time to speak in a minute. Reverend Middleton?
Yeah, I was just going to ask clarification on this civic institutional future land use. So are we putting a county office building or something up there? Or?
No, sir. However, this is likely due to proximity to Ladson Elementary, which is just 2 parcels over.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moody.
I had a question. Would a PD be more appropriate to try to encapsulate what he's trying to get done instead of just an up zone, I guess? That's always my concern is an up zone, they cash out and go away. If that's truly the plans, why not memorialize it in a PD?
Yeah, the PD is an option to achieve this development. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Who do we have to sign up to speak on this?
We do have Mr. Knight and then Anthony G. Brown.
Go right ahead. You got 2 minutes.
I think he just did his 2 minutes.
It's just a flex space, that's all. That's all I was trying to do, is just get the line moved from here. I already removed it, but if y'all wanted me to put it back, I'd like to see if I can get it put back 35 feet from the general office.
And so if this doesn't work out, are you willing to talk to staff about a plan development?
Yes.
For that sort of, what that does is only you can do what specifically you signed up to do. And, even if you sell it to somebody else, it would only be for that use in a plan and a PD. So if this doesn't work out for you, you might want to talk to Mr. Evans, let them have to do a plan development, but it goes away and you have to wait 1 year, right? If this fails.
Unless we waive it.
Development would be a different application,
Okay.
if that's what he wants.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, sir. Thank you. Mr. Bryant?
I would not want to interfere with his constitutional rights, so you can vote however you want. The issue is with the process, the criteria and methods regarding the Finance Committee meeting, I think like the 12th, I think you had, regarding the housing issue and the designations. Now, Joel and I talked in terms of he went through a process. You had a criteria, you had method, you had designations. With the housing piece, you don't have any. So this is the problem. You need to try to develop some level of criteria because Joel can't consider financial hardship. So if someone comes before you that wants to do affordable housing or whatever, and there's no relief for that person to appeal to somebody to get the relief to do the affordable housing, you'll be stuck in the Planning Commission.
Thank you, sir. All right, next public hearing.
Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing regarding a rezoning request at 4104 Betsy Carson Parkway and 3317 Trumpet Road.
Thank you. As stated, this is a request to rezone TMS 203-00-00232 and 233 from the agricultural residential zoning district to Story Farms Planned Development PD 183 zoning district. In 1999, the subject parcels were zoned agricultural general and became agricultural residential with the adoption of the ZLDR in 2001. Prior to this request, there have been no previous rezoning requests for these properties. Here is the location of the subject property when looking at the county as a whole. The subject parcel has a future land use designation of agricultural residential, shown here in green. The subject properties contain a farm stand / retail store, petting zoo, and agricultural storage. Surrounding properties in all directions are zoned agricultural residential and contain residential uses or are undeveloped. Here's an aerial view of the area looking to the north and to the south. These are photos of the subject properties and neighboring parcels. This slide shows the proposed land uses within the planned development, which include but are not limited to food sales, alcohol sales, agricultural processing and storage, as well as a petting zoo. Special events on the properties will not exceed the 5 allowed currently in the ZLDR and will comply with all applicable regulations at the time of permit submittal, and there will be no amplified music outside of those permitted special events. All signage will comply with Article 9.8 of the ZLDR, as well as minimum parking requirements. Parking will be allowed in front of the principal building, which will be screened by a 4-foot-high fence. The applicant will comply with the AGR zoning district regulations of the ZLDR in effect at the time of application submittal for all matters not specifically addressed in the plan development. Here are the proposed density, intensity, and dimensional standards for the plan development. They largely follow the current AGR standards with 3 exceptions. The proposed Trumpet Road right-of-way setback is less restrictive than the current standards, as well as the proposed side setback. The proposed rear setback, however, is more restrictive than the current zoning district standards. Here is the proposed site plan for the plan development. Staff believes the approval criteria have been met. Therefore, staff recommends approval with the following conditions. First, to obtain letters of coordination from Public Works Stormwater and Public Works Engineering. Second, remove the following sentence from page 4 of the PD guidelines referencing a restaurant use, as the proposed PD is not proposing a restaurant use. At their June meeting, Planning Commission recommended approval with staff conditions, as well as one additional condition, requesting that all instances of the word intent in the PD document be replaced with the word shall. Prior to the Planning Commission meeting, 3 letters in opposition were received, as well as 12 letters that stated the application could be supported if changes to the proposed PD were made. At the June Planning Commission meeting, the applicant and property owners spoke in support of this request, and 2 individuals spoke in opposition. This meeting was noticed as required. Thank you.
Questions from staff, council members? Okay, anybody sign up to speak?
Yes, we have 3 people, starting with Anthony G. Bryant.
Okay.
The housing chairman of this Affordable Housing Committee to look closely at this PD completely, to clear the designation in terms of what this would do, how it would go to the loopholes in terms of the Planning Commission, BZA, and all commissions that don't deal with financial hardship, because that's what you're dealing with affordable housing, financial hardship.
Thank you. Next.
We have Jeremy Story and then Bill Eubanks.
I'm Jeremy Story. I'm the owner of this property. I just want to give you a quick
What's your address, sir?
Excuse me?
Your address?
3373 Trumpet Road. I live on the property, one of the properties behind the market itself. So currently we run a farm stand. We have a farm directly behind this. We use produce and other local items from adjoining farmers throughout Johns Island and Charleston County. Basically, what we want to achieve here is bring awareness and education to the community, as well as, you know, being able to serve food, what we raise, and sell that food in unprepared take-home versions as well. It's very important to me to kind of restore the legacy or maintain the farming heritage on Johns Island, and to be able to educate not only kids but also adults where their food comes from, so they can see that. I know it says petting zoo there. We don't want to have any exotic animals, just kind of something that shows what we raise and the food that they can buy there and eat themselves. But yeah, that's basically in a nutshell what we're trying to do there. I can answer any questions if anybody has anything.
Thank you.
You're
This
welcome.
will come before our Planning and Public Works meeting. Which date is that?
August 18th.
August 18th. Yes, sir. Your name and address?
Bill Eubanks. I'm Director of Planning and Landscape Architecture for SGA&W, 804 Meeting Street. So I've been working with Mr. Story and with staff for over a year on this. And really what happened was he had his farm stand on a parcel on Betsy Karras, and he's carrying on agricultural activities on other parcels. But since they aren't contiguous, he wasn't able to have his farm stand. So the only way to solve that was to do these two parcels as a PD. So this will really just allow him to continue what he's been doing, serving the citizens of Charleston County and Johns Island. And the revisions that were requested by Planning Commission were very minor. In fact, we've already made those revisions, and we're ready to go. So we just ask for your support.
Thank you. Okay, any more other public hearing?
No, sir.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a short 3-minute break to allow these folks to go get a little refreshed, and then we're gonna come back and go right into our public comments. How many people signed up for public comments?
17 people that signed up, but of course, we only hear from 15 or 30 minutes.
All right, so we're gonna take a little short break. We'll be back in about 2 to 3 minutes.
Because we have so many different things with things.
Okay, I'm gonna ask everybody to be seated so we can start this meeting.
This is what we all agree on. Instead of
These people been working all day, I gotta get them out of here and get them home.
zoning is not necessarily going to be the final. That can be challenged in court.
We're going to start our public comments process. We give each
I'll be
members
right
2
with you on
minutes.
that.
State your name and your address. Each person that wants to speak, if your name is on the agenda, and you call your name, you come up and give us your name and address, and we will give you up to 2 minutes. Okay? So who's the first person?
First person's Anthony G. Bryant, followed by Louise Maybank, and then Melinda Kelly.
So if Ms. Mayback will get behind Mr. Bryant, you'll be the next person in line.
Well, I made a public comment to the Department of Justice regarding redistricting map of the city of Charleston. What you will find in that map is the problem. City of Charleston's values have inflated in 20 years close to maybe a couple $2 billion in value, okay, in value. So the city of Charleston is a premise, by and large, for our problem. MUSC don't pay no taxes, Roper don't pay no taxes, Charleston don't pay no taxes, Center don't pay no taxes. They don't pay no taxes, but they claim they put a lot of money back in the community. With the racial discrimination lawsuits, I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, this council has done an outstanding job with this issue. City of Charleston didn't do it. No, nobody's done it but y'all. So you should be commended for the effort you make, not for the criticism you get. I was 20 years ago, Quadro Campbell, many brothers, you, Teddy, Henry, all of us were out there on this affordable house, Kalon Middleton as well, back in the day. This is the only council that's serious about this. We need 9-0 vote here. We need 9 of y'all to come together and say, you know what? We're going to do something about this issue. We don't need 5-4. We don't need 8-2. We need 9-0. And I'm hoping y'all work together to make history and make this happen for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
29 Burger Hill Road, Waimea Island. I'm here tonight to ask you for numbers 6E, I think it's 6D, E, and F on your agenda of the committee, of the council later, to please not move it forward. My reason for it is that the wording as proposed in the modification does not include a way for the public to speak before the administrative decision. And it's been a long time for the citizens of Charleston County coming up here with a certain protocol that isn't being changed in that particular circumstance. And it's not clear in what you've written as to how the public can interact before the administrator makes his decision. And so for that reason, I'm asking that you withdraw it at this point or not act on it or whatever you might wish to do. And because I don't think that it's sound government as we talk about of the people, by the people, for the people. And I think that it's been done hastily and it can work out, but it may not be best to work it out tonight. So respectfully, I ask that you not move it forward into a permanent position. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Melinda Kelly, Dennis James, Charlotte Edwards.
Good evening. My name is Melinda Kelly. I live at 2124 Allendale, Waimea. And I'm here also about the same concern that Ms. Maybank has. And I think last Thursday at committee meeting, there was some discussion about whether the public would get notice. And I know that it was mentioned that there are interested parties lists. I don't believe we've ever gotten notice for administrative approvals like this would be. We get notice for variances and things that go to BZA, and we get notice for planning commission items that are up for a zoning change. And so that's concerning. And it was talked about last Thursday that, well, it could be appealed if the planning director made a decision, then it could just be appealed to the BZA. And that's kind of a difficult thing for the average person to appeal something to the BZA. It's a lot of paperwork, it's a cost and expense, and we would just, I would just ask that y'all have some sort of way to give notice ahead of time. Maybe if this does go through, a requirement that we get notice ahead of time, or anybody on any interested parties list throughout the county, not just Wadmalaw. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Dennis Vane. My address is 1340 Polly Point Road on Wadmalaw Island. I want to speak again against the same topic that the other two speakers spoke against, Section 424.4. So at the prior meeting of this council, the proposal was made and noted that the change was rejected 5-1 by the Charleston County Planning Commission and as an advisory recommendation to this council. In addition, the proposal appeared to be directed specifically at a prior decision by the Board of Zoning Appeals that had rejected an application unanimously for zoning changes by Point Farm investors, stating that it had no merit. I think that the issue specifically is that this amendment does not allow for public input into these kinds of things, but leaves it in the hands of a single administrator without discussion by the board, which was initially designed to deal with these things. And so the overriding of the discussion of the board and the ability of the board to approve these intrusions essentially takes us out of the hands of the public at all. The individuals who supported this change at the time, the last meeting, were agents or employees of the mitigation petitioners. It's a change in policy that administers any public input, and in my opinion, should be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Charlotte Edwards, Sarah Sturr, Amanda Townsend.
Charlotte Edwards, 625 Parish Road, 29407. I am also speaking in reference to 6D on the agenda, that I'm extremely disheartened that our Charleston County Council members would take away our right to have a public say into this issue. We, the public, vote all of you in office to have our best interest at heart, and that the fact that you're so willing to take away our voice. I heard in the statement last week that you said there was an opportunity at the state level, but you represent us at the local level. That is our county, Charleston County. We should have the opportunity to speak in reference to our community. So I urge you to reconsider this and not take away our public voice. I also would like to make of note that you just stated that it was important for the public and the voters to be able to weigh in into the reference, into the housing referendum. So why not this? Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Sarah Sturr, Amanda Townsend, Margaret Hollett.
My name is Sarah LeGree Sturr. I live at 6862 Point Farm Road, Wadmalaw Island. At last Thursday's meeting, it was stated that interested parties would be notified. But my question is, how do you know who the interested parties are? My property, is the result of family land that was handed down from my father. I am both an interested and an impacted party. My land abuts my deceased sister's land, and the only reason I found out about zoning changes is because I'm in charge of her trust and I receive her mail. So I would not have known other than getting her mail, because I was not personally notified, as another neighbor on the road was not notified that could not be here tonight. How is the general public going to know of meetings when signs for zoning, zoning changes are placed on a dirt road that's with limited inhabitants and behind a gate? When Point Farm investors bought the property adjacent to ours, they repeatedly said they would get together with us, fellow inhabitants on Point Farm Road, to let us know what was happening. That is yet to happen. They spent almost 2 years getting ready to put in a gate, but we only had less than 48 hours of it becoming operational. And at that point in time, they did not notify EMS or the fire department. I was actually the one that notified them. I'm bringing this issue up to make you aware of communication and safety issues. We are all wondering, what is the investors' end game? What are they trying to do? I am concerned the latest, I'm sorry, my voice is tonight, latest ordinance change proposal to Section 424.4, reductions of the OCRM critical line and setbacks and buffers, allowing staff to make administrative approvals decisions without input.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is a step.
Next person, please.
Amanda Townsend, Margaret Hollett, Bruce McGugan.
Hello, I'm Amanda Townsend, and I reside at 1316 Kruger Avenue, and I'm an interested party in this same matter. Rules were put in place for a reason, and changing them should require equal reasoning. Where the public is affected, protections for public input should remain. These changes are designed to bypass public input and are misguided. The mitigation bank driving this ordinance change is working through the appeal process at state and federal levels. A variance request was voted down by the BZA. Planning commissioners voted unanimously against this proposed ordinance. Despite this, you are considering overriding that and weakening our county's ability to protect its constituents against the desires of a few. Concerning this mitigation bank, as an impacted neighbor and Wadmalaw community, we were denied a public hearing by the Army Corps of Engineers. DHEC did finally grant us a public forum in the fall of 2021. It was well attended, but since this issue crosses between county, state, and federal jurisdictions, DHEC could only address the state issues, leaving the county to address its portions. The investor property owners have chosen not to engage as a neighbor or as a community member. Rather, they dispatch their lawyer or the owner consultant of American Mitigation Company. This behavior only reinforces my concern as a directly affected neighbor and property owner. I ask you to think long and hard about the path we're going down to sacrifice our ordinances and principles of public involvement in giving up your constituents' rights of home rule. I ask that the council defer the vote on the proposal and or amend it to include notification of interested parties before staff rules in order to include citizens' comments in the beginning of the review process. Thank you for your consideration in this most important matter.
Thank you. Next.
Margaret Hollett, Bruce McGugan, Christine Von Kulitz.
My name is Margaret Hallett, and I live at 6701 Point Farm Road, Wadmalaw Island. Thank you all for serving on County Council. I wanted to address the proposal that would eliminate public comments for BZA decisions. Your legal counsel mentioned last week that there were multiple stages where the public could comment on different things. In our case, we never received any notice from the Army Corps of Engineers regarding Point Farm Mitigation Bank, and a portion of our land is adjacent to the proposed site. So that eliminated the first stage that we would have voiced our concerns. I have great respect for the BZA staff. However, I think that no one should make a final decision involving millions of dollars of taxpayer money without public input. Mr. Moody said last week that it was the same players making comments every time. Well, frankly, it's exhausting trying to protect our wonderful, pristine Wadmalaw from hungry developers breathing down our necks. And I, along with many other Wadmalaw citizens, appreciate the Coastal Conservation League, the Low Country Land Trust, and the Wadmalaw Island Land Planning Committee working so hard on our behalf. The saddest thing about this mitigation bank is that if the previous owners of the property had known more about mitigation, they probably wouldn't have had to sell the land that had been in their family since the 1700s, and they may have done it in a way that preserved rather than created wetlands. My concerns have been addressed by the three groups that I have mentioned. If they are against it, then that is good enough for me. I also wanted to thank Mr. Middleton and Mrs. Johnson for questioning the elimination of public input in the discussions last week. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Bruce McGugan, Christine Von Kulitz, and John Taylor Jr.
Good evening, Bruce McGugan, 5496 Stoneview Drive. Mr. Chairman, council members, I've applied for the open position on the St. John's Fire District Commission and wanted to take a moment of your time to provide some background information about myself. I retired from the district in 2014 after 27 years of service. My rank was captain, acting battalion chief. During my time at St. John's, I was on several committees, including but not limited to apparatus technical specifications, design and purchase, fire equipment purchase, annual pumper service testing, annual ladder testing, and providing documentation of these tests for the ISO inspection. My time at St. John's also included a part-time position in the maintenance division, where my duties included service, maintenance, and repair of apparatus and equipment, along with staffing during major events. While serving on these various committees, I was tasked with gathering information and providing requests for needed funding, and once approved, staying within the budgetary restraints of the said purchases. A large portion of time spent on these committees was voluntary with no monetary compensation from the district. I wish to continue this service to the community. Thanks for your consideration and recommendation for this appointment.
Thank you. Next.
Dean Von Kolnitz, John Taylor Jr., Martha Adams.
Christine is not up. Call the next person up.
John Taylor.
John Taylor.
Is she Christine?
John's right there.
Who is this lady now?
Good evening, members of council. John Taylor Jr., 1406 Hezekiah Road, Guatemala Island, South Carolina. I have comments just based on what you've heard already regarding 6D, E, and F. It is troubling to know that this particular proposal does strip the ability for public comment. Today, as it states, zoning matters, height, setbacks, buffers, those things that impact zoning matters. When there is a proposal plan that infringes upon those things, there is opportunity through the BZA which impacted properties, neighbors can make public comment. And I ask that you would still consider that. The most important piece of this is really just understanding that if there's a pathway forward, to really understand that the property be protected. And so if there's a creative solution in the room, I still encourage that to move forward, but really being able to have powers that be sit down and discuss that, what that may look like. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Adams, John Zolgar, Caroline Pageant.
Martha Adams, 409 Royal Avenue, Mount Pleasant, 29464. Good evening, council. On behalf of my church, St. Stephen's, and the 40 other congregations that represent the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, we'd like to express our gratitude for the $20 million set aside that you voted on at your last council meeting. Thank you. Thank you for making affordable housing a priority. We understand that county staff is working on the very Housing Our Future plan, and it sounds like a very good idea, a very good plan. For that plan to succeed, however, the $20 million set aside must remain in place. It cannot be diverted to other purposes. CAJM's research showed that one of the reasons the referendum failed previously was that voters lacked confidence in the plan and in a sure plan for the funding. That will not be the case this time. A plan is in place, and we at CAJM are committed to informing voters about this plan so that the referendum will succeed. The housing crisis in Charleston is dire. Each of you knows the statistics regarding housing stability. It's a main factor in children's ability to do well in school. It's a main factor in adults being able to perform well at work, to hold on to jobs, to support their families, to feel dignity, and to become responsible citizens. Decent, stable housing provides a sense of security and gives people an opportunity to be contributing members of a community. Helping them helps all of us. Please resist being seduced by anything that would divert you from funding the Housing Our Future plan. Please help the most vulnerable in our community, such as the disabled and the elderly, and also those that support our lives, teachers, nurses. Would all who support the Affordable Housing Trust and the plan and a $3 million increase, please stand.
Thank you. Next person, please.
John Zolgar.
Good evening. John Zalogar, 5528 Frisco Lane, Johns Island Task Force. I just want to address two misconceptions relative to the resilience element item that's before you tonight. First are the misconceptions about the cost impacts. So let me go through the 4 items. Building height definition. This gives homeowners and developers more flexibility. There is no cost impact. Incentivize parking on the buildings. If the homeowners or the developers do not want to use this incentive, there is no impact. Prohibit driveways and OCRM critical line buffers. There is no impact, and actually it could be a cost savings if your driveway is washed out due to a storm event. Incorporate impervious surface limitations. By permitting items such as gravel driveways rather than concrete ones, this could actually be a cost savings for housing. With respect to large commercial developments, the stormwater manual would take precedence, resulting in no cost increases. Second, there are misconceptions about the Resilience Committee. In reality, it's not a committee. It's a stakeholder advisory group. The group does not vote on anything. They only make suggestions to planning staff, and that staff actually writes the recommended changes. And staff has done a great job of putting together the advisory group, and it consists of a broad cross-section of residents and organizations. For example, the advisory group members include Patrick Arnold with the Charleston Home Builders Association, Josh Dix with the Charleston Trident Association of Realtors, and Jason Crowley with the Coastal Conservation League, a pretty cross-section of organizations. I hope this clears up misconceptions and that you approve these changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Caroline Pageant, William Thornby.
Hi. Hi. Hello. Thank you all. I know it's late. My name's Caroline Paget. I reside at 6850 Point Farm Road, Wadmalaw Island. And I know it's late, and I can tell that folks are over this. And I am against the amendment for 6D. And as been spoken in other meetings, this meeting, there is a concern of taking public opinion out of the process. And what we've asked before, and I don't know if you're willing to speak to it, is why? Like, why would the council actually vote on this? Because it's concerning and it's quite confusing, honestly, because this isn't the same process for other projects. And so if you do move forward with it, I really ask that you don't take away even another step of public voice. You know, this has got far-reaching implications from this project. You know, as far as the mitigation, you know, I live and walk the land every single day. I've been raised on that land. And we are concerned as a community of the investors' intentions of development, and we will need your help in protecting this land. And we're all concerned. And again, I think there's been a loss of communication between the parties. I've really reached out to the investors that they're not willing to talk to us as our neighbors. And so also the confusion of asking if you can speak to it, like why would you say yes when this isn't due process? I think there's a lot of miscommunication, confusion, and we're just really asking for transparency and integrity and to really take the community into consideration. So thank you.
Thank you. Next.
William Thornsby. Sheila West Gibbs is the last one.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I'm William Thornby. I live at 1865 Christian Road in West Ashley. On behalf of the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, I'd like to applaud you for the set-aside you voted on at the last council meeting. The $20 million this council has set aside for affordable housing makes an important statement that shows your commitment to the people of Charleston. It shows that all of you who voted in favor understand how important it is for our community to have housing that is accessible to everyone. By everyone, I'm talking about the very people that make Charleston the #1 travel destination year after year. The April 2022 Pew Research Center study lists their salaries, and those salaries do not provide enough income to afford the average rent in Charleston. Those are the people that this funding can help. We would also like to encourage you to maintain the set-aside for affordable housing and not to allow it to be reprioritized. The council has been saying for years that affordable housing is a top priority, and reprioritizing this money would be in direct opposition to that goal. We would also like to stand in support of the 3 mills being levied to fund the housing of our future plan. With the 3 mills assessment, the $225 million can be raised. Then add to that any other funding sources that may be additionally available and significant progress can be made. We understand that the ballot language may not be clear to everyone, so the Charleston Area Justice Ministry is committed to doing our part to help educate voters on what the language means and the impact it can have on our community. Thank you.
Thank you. The last person is?
Sheila West Gibbs. Wanda Woot, if Sheila's not here.
The next person after her is who?
That's Wanda Woot. All right,
Okay,
that's it.
that's it. Okay, thank you. We'll now go back and reconvene to our county council meeting where we have item number 4, Ms. Salisbury.
Yes, sir. An ordinance to amend that portion of Charleston County Code of Ordinances, Section 2-137, pertaining to fees in the Emergency Medical Services Department, and to add a provision for relief from debt for those patients experiencing financial hardship. Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Aye. Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass? Aye. Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman? Aye. Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes third reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent.
4B.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 2008, authorizing an exclusive franchise for the collection of solid waste from households in unincorporated areas of the county and other matters related thereto. Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Aye. Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes third reading with 8 ayes and 1 absent.
5A. Yes, sir, Mr. Moody.
Of Mr. Dix's comments in the Special Finance Committee, I would recommend we postpone 5A.
Mr. Chairman?
Let me see if there's a second. I'll second that. That discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, of course, Mr. Dix is a member of the task force, as was already elucidated earlier, and I have credible comments from members of that task force that Mr. Dix has never voiced these concerns in those meetings, and so why would that be a credible reason for us to then remove this at this time? One person's comments.
Mr. Dix, you want to, at the same time, Mr. Moody, you want to?
I'll vote.
Okay, so we voting to, so when are we going to do? We going to just remove this and bring it back before third reading? Is that your intent?
I guess we can't have an indefinite postponement. Do we need to set a date or anything, Ms. Ham?
I would suggest we do it, before third reading, if we could. I do it at third reading to give everybody enough time to, to come together and then make a final decision at third reading. If you good with that.
You're suggesting we postpone first reading, aren't you?
Yes.
That can't be done indefinitely. It would help if you designated to when it would be deferred.
Can I speak to this, Mr.
Sure.
Moody? All right. We got a lengthy 5-page explanation for this, all members of council, and I sought further explanation because I was a little unclear as to what the specifics of this issue are. And so if I may elaborate, it's getting very late, but my first home was in a single family neighborhood where we had basically 1/4 acre lots, and each lot had a house and a detached garage and a driveway. There is absolutely no way that neighborhoods could be built that way anymore. But there are plenty of places in Charleston County where that is a perfectly acceptable way to construct. Not only that, they have to comply with existing stormwater regulations. And so this is a huge burden on the building industry from a single family resident standpoint. As to industrial, which Mr. Moody brought up last time, there are currently no impervious surface regulations. You look at our Teddy E. Pryor building, or the libraries we've recently built, or the material recycling facility. None of those could have been built under these standards the way we're currently saying, with 50% impervious, including your parking. These changes are a sledgehammer to areas that may have very low, according to LIDAR data. We have very good maps coming out according to the legislation that Chip Campson just put out. We'll be able to see within the county and pinpoint areas that are subject to the flooding that this is supposed to address. This is a sledgehammer for an area that we can take a scalpel with. Quite frankly, I would like to see it postponed until staff can come back, whether it's planning staff, zoning, whomever, and tell us specifically what areas need these impervious requirements, what those standards should be, and help us narrow this down because it is simply too broad in its current form.
Okay,
I
Ms.
just have
Johnson?
a question here. For Mr. Evans. Earlier, you showed me a map that you had about a survey that asked various people in different communities about the drainage. Can you share that map with us?
I don't have a copy of the map on me.
Because I think that would kind of answer the question that Ms.
So,
Honeycutt.
yes, ma'am. There was a questionnaire that went out, and the questionnaire was asking folks about what their concerns are in their area as it addresses to, as it pertains to flooding. And so when those 355 responses came back, and about 70% of them were West Ashley and James Island, of those 355, in the urbanized areas of West Ashley and James Island.
So the drainage problems were on West Ashley and James Island areas?
Majority of them, yes.
Right, okay. And so pretty much James Island, I mean, there's no more building I see is going to be happening in that area to even address the building of too much pervious surfaces. And so you're still going to have drainage problems there. And so, I mean, Mr. Moody, you're in West Ashley, your area is pretty much built out? Okay.
Love it.
So, and I don't have a problem in the rural areas. So I don't see why we would have to postpone this. We just go right on with it. I mean, what more are we trying to get? I don't think I understand that. What more are you trying to find out between now and the next time?
Madam Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
As Ms. Honeycutt just indicated, this is a one-size-fits-all problem, Ms. Johnson, in my opinion. And I would rather our staff come back and Joel, I mean, Mr. Evans, I don't know how long it would take you to come back with reasonable alternatives to present to us, but this one-size-fits-all. And you just heard Ms. Johnson earlier, Mr. Dix indicated he didn't have a calculation, but to layer this over affordable housing or anything else like that would drive up the cost of those things as well. So I'd be interested to hear what Mr. Evans thinks, how long it would take for him to staff to bring back something.
Let's do
Go ahead,
this.
Mr. Chairman.
August the 11th is going to be a county council meeting, right? A special county council meeting we called for this and the referendum. So, I'm hearing one thing from a group of people over here, another thing from a group of people over here. We just got this today, we need to read it. So will you be able to have information by August 11th?
I could probably have something, but the process would be whatever that staff comes up with, it would need to go to planning commission if it's a change.
No.
Right.
All we're
Okay.
asking you to do is inform us.
Okay.
We're not asking to send it back to the planning commission. I just need to have some information, in light of what Ms. Honeycutt have here, and what, in light of Ms. Johnson's just said it's now, in West Ashley is built out and James Island is built out. So I need time to, I guess, to talk to my constituents as well, and then talk to other people to see if they think this would hurt them or help them. So if y'all want to do this to August the 11th, Mr. Moody, I'll be glad to do that and support moving it to August the 11th until we can get some further information.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So Mr. Zoglar, he may be gone. He's still here. He, kind of spouted off some things saying no financial impact. And so I don't see how one person's, we just need to consider it all, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
I don't see how one person's sort of opinion then trumps anybody else's. So I just think that we need to make certain that we're just not throwing one name around like that is the authority, and other people are disproving some of these same things. And so we need to really balance this thing out. And when staff comes with whatever, because they've already made a presentation to us. And so the next presentation they make, if we don't like that, based on the, you know, the amendments and or changes that they make, then do we send them back again?
No,
Yeah.
no. I think August 11th will be final for me. Ms. Honeycutt.
I want to raise another issue that this points to. Mr. Zlogar, gravel may be cheaper than concrete, but impervious pavement is not cheaper. In fact, it is substantially more expensive. Secondly, a raised house is still considered impervious. Any roof surface over the ground, even if it doesn't create a slab surface, is considered impervious. So that is what we're concerned about. We just amended last year our ZLDR to allow for ADUs, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And part of that was to increase housing supply, because if I could in my little backyard turn my, you know, space that might have been a garage into a dwelling unit, then I would create another housing unit where my mother-in-law could live, or where my, you know, college student could rent out, or whatever. It would provide more housing. What we're doing here is cutting off that opportunity, because we're saying, nope, you can't have more than 40, 50% of impervious surface. So now you can't build that structure. So this has far-reaching implications in areas that you can build. There's plenty of areas on James Island that you can still put in an ADU. In fact, a lot of people are taking advantage of that right now. But if we change the zoning ordinance with this giant hammer of a change, instead of being more thoughtful about it and putting it where it actually is affecting the flood-prone areas, we're affecting it for everybody. And so the very things we implemented last year won't be able to be done this year.
Okay, Mr. Moody, you want to change your?
I think we had some more comments, but I would entertain that after they're done, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sass, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that right now, when permits are given, the stormwater is looked at, and there are flood-prone areas, and there are areas that are not flood-prone. And I think that this is kind of as somebody already said, this is a one-size-fits-all. I just think that there should be more decision-making made rather than piling this regulation higher and higher. That's what I'd like to say.
Okay, Mr. Swayze, you got anything?
No, I'm actually inclined to vote for it, but I'm willing to hear whatever staff can come up with in the next month.
I would accept your recommendation. We postpone this to that special committee meeting.
It has to come at the council, county council, not the finance, okay? It's already passed out.
Okay, I'm sorry. So special county council meeting on,
Okay.
that would be the 11th, I believe, you said?
All
That'd be
in
fine. I'll
favor?
accept that.
The motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. All right, 5B. What's the pleasure?
Move to approve.
Second by Mr. Sass. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. 5C.
Move to approve.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Honeycutt and Mr. Sass.
Mr. Sass can take it.
Mr. Sass, you defer to you first.
I think that I'd like to see make an amendment and have single-family residences added to that.
Okay, would you accept that?
Accept that,
You
yes, sir.
accept that, Ms. Johnson, yourself, you accept it?
Okay.
Okay, she accepted. All in favor of the motion? Mr. Swears.
Mr. Evans, are there any negative impacts of that? I know we had a little bit of discussion last time, but is there any reason we should not do that?
Well, just so that the council knows what this would mean possibly is that, especially in an established neighborhood, you might not necessarily even be in a flood zone. With this incentive, it incentivizes parking underneath that house and not include that distance from the ground in that parking area as part of the height. So you could wind up with houses that are a full story higher than what would normally be allowed. And
That happens a lot on James Island.
Yeah, I mean.
And Folly.
The height of your neighbor's house is meaningful to a lot of people. It's meaningful in my neighborhood. We had that debate every time somebody proposed building a house, so we might not take this too lightly.
Withdraw.
We gonna be here all night.
Yeah.
She withdraw a second. Does somebody else want a second?
Second. As proposed.
Okay, with the amendment that she gave to Reverend Middleton. Okay? All right, so let's just move forward now. Any more discussion?
So what is on the table right now?
Add family, single-story family.
To add, okay, this is just to add the amendment.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And one nay. Two nay. Okay, so now, all right, so let's vote on the actual amendment now, what Ms. Honeycutt had. Because, you know, we have voted for the amendment. Well, we don't have to because it was
that
amended
was
doing
it.
it.
And you can go forward.
Okay, so it passes, okay. All right, 5D,
All right, I'm sorry. Y'all haven't read the ordinance for 5B or C yet.
I've got it.
we'll read,
Okay.
yeah, we should read them one after the
Amendment
other.
of the first reading, amendment up to third.
Amendment after first reading on all of them.
Yes.
Point of order, we just voted on the amendment only. and
No,
now-
no, you don't have to because the amendment is made in the
He
motion.
accepted the amendment with
Accepted
the
it.
It's
original.
not separate, made in the motion. Okay,
5D, move to approve.
is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Honeycutt. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by, what is that, amend up to third reading?
Third reading, yes, sir.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? One nay. Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
yes, sir.
If I could ask a question back on 5C, and I'll use my own neighborhood, Joel, as an example. The homes in there are elevated, the first floor is 15 feet in the air, okay? So folks could typically build a two-story. On top of that 15 feet, they built 2 stories. Would this allow them to go even higher, or would that not impact there? Because you got 15 feet underneath already, so they wouldn't get any additional.
So that it's where you measure it from. So the incentivized parking does not penalize you if you decide to park underneath the building, no matter where that flood zone is or where that freeboard is. That's which is the definition that you just considered. If you decided to put a parking area under your house, the height would be started to be measured wherever you put that new floor area. So it could be 8 feet, it could be 4 feet, it could be something in between that would not be counted toward the height. The height would be shifted upward.
Okay,
done?
we'll talk more about it, because, I mean, the homes are already very high, and I can't imagine them going higher.
So if you're in your area, Mr. Schweers, you're in a flood zone,
V-zone.
a V zone, whatever that base flood elevation is. I don't know when your house was built, but recently it was 2 feet of freeboard.
Right.
So your house gets measured at that 2 feet above base flood elevation. That's the base that you start measuring from.
Right.
With the incentive for the parking, if you want to go up so you'll be able even further to be able to park, this does away with using that parking area that penalizes you. That your new base now is up to the ceiling of the garage, regardless of your flood zone.
That's where it already was.
Yeah, I mean, so you already got 15 feet to park, so there's no incentive to do anything different.
But they don't have to.
Right. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, there's just there'll be a certain amount of feet that will no longer be counted toward the height. However high you needed to go up to get to the ceiling of the garage with the incentive.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so we move to 6, we read the ordinance on all three of them.
Yes, sir. An ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance Number 1202 as amended to amend the building height definition at the following document location, Chapter 12 definitions. An ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance Number 1202 as amended to incentivize parking under buildings at the following document locations, Chapter 4 Base Zoning Districts, Chapter 9 Development Standards, and Chapter 12 Definitions as amended. And an ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance Number 1202 as amended to prohibit driveways in OCRM critical line buffers at the following document locations, Chapter 4 Base Zoning Districts.
Okay, we move to 6A.
Mr. Chairman.
Pleasure.
I understand that the Army Corps of Engineers asked us to reconsider item 6A. I might move that we postpone that to the same August 11 meeting.
So what, can you tell us what they're asking for, so council, you detail know? On 6A, what are
Mr. Evans.
what is the core, Joe?
Actually, the ordinance is addressing when the Army Corps contacted us and said that they were no longer going to provide their approval unless there's a permit required. So the Army Corps was, we were relying on the Army Corps to help us identify and locate where the freshwater wetlands were, because that's what our density is based on for planning and zoning purposes. The Army Corps recently wrote a letter to, I think, all the local jurisdictions,
Right.
and basically said, we're not going to provide those letters anymore. Right. So this is a result of that contact from Army Corps that would take care of it. Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Again, I wanted to make sure we are clear on this because I thought that they would only look at a final application, and what we're suggesting is that they do this as part of the preliminary application.
So they will not, their letter to us, to Charleston County and to the other jurisdictions, was that they are no longer going to provide that final determination to any individual or any jurisdiction that is not requesting an actual permit, which means a permit to fill or alter that wetland. And for planning and zoning purposes, we use that delineation for development standards in our ordinance. Density, location of driveways, we need to know that. That's how we calculate how something can be developed.
So is this delineation only a requirement of final plat approval?
No,
or the initial submission?
Go ahead, Andrew. You're talking.
When he says final determination, that's a final Army Corps jurisdictional determination. So the Corps will only review requests for delineations when it has to do with a Corps permit to fill. What we've been doing is for preliminary plat and final plat applications, in order to figure out density and those kinds of things, we need to know where those freshwater wetlands are. So we've been getting an approved jurisdictional delineation from the Army Corps. As part of that process. And the Army Corps wrote us a letter, and all the other jurisdictions that said, hey, we're not going to do that anymore. We suggest you do what we wrote in there. Right. We got that language directly from the Army Corps letter, right, using a third-party consultant to delineate where those wetlands are to take it out of their field.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion.
I'll withdraw that motion and move for committee recommendation subject to changes up to third reading.
I'll second.
There's a second by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. First reading.
An ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations, ordinance number 1202 as amended, to amend the freshwater wetland delineation requirements at the following document locations: Chapter 5, Overlay and Special Purpose Zoning Districts, Chapter 8, Subdivision Regulations, and Chapter 12, Definitions.
Okay, 6B.
Would y'all like to take these item by item? I think we have
Item by
some.
item.
Okay, yep,
Yes.
absolutely. Move for committee recommendation on item 6B.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it.
Move
First
for
reading.
item-
First
move for-
reading.
Move for approval, item 6C.
Let her read the
I'm sorry.
ordinance.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations, ordinance number 1202 as amended, to amend the tree barricade radius distance requirement at the following document location: Chapter 9, Development Standards.
Okay. Mr. Moody?
For committee recommendation on item 6C.
Second.
Second by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Ms. Salisbury?
Ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations, ordinance number 1202 as amended, to clarify the billboard distance requirement at the following document location: Chapter 9, Development Standards.
6D.
Chairman,
Mr.
move for
Chair,
committee recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion, Reverend Middleton.
I have a couple of things. One for the attorney. I know I asked the question on Thursday relative to mitigation banks and if we had gone through that state and federal approval process for that, and you said yes. And then I wanted to ask a follow-up question. Are there any appeals currently relative to our mitigation bank application?
So you mean the application with Point Farm?
Right.
There is an appeal currently pending on the decision that the Board of Zoning Appeals made.
And
but not on the
bank itself.
right.
Okay. The other thing I wish to interject in this conversation particularly goes back to what I said on Thursday relative to the public having the opportunity to give input on this level. And I do I heard clearly. It was articulated saying that based on the Army Corps, based on DHEC, et cetera. We've heard from the members of the community, and I don't know them personally, but I appreciate them being here today and writing us, saying that at many of those critical junctures, they were not even contacted. And one lady, just hearing her saying, being the trustee of her sister's property, she just intercepted mail that made her aware that didn't even come to her. And then lastly, I would also like to note that even when you're putting up signage, and if it's behind a fence or a setback or in an area where the people can't even see it, that does not indicate public engagement. And I personally, and this same council, when we were working on certain processes on Bees Ferry Road and with Hunt Club and other communities, and I went back or Blue Water, whatever the case, I went and I met with those communities, met with the developers, and we made a distinct precedent, I would say, that, you know, if you have not engaged the community itself, then this council is not going to just carte blanche, you know, approve of, you know, developers just overrunning these people's land. And so we heard from the community, or members of the community, saying that they have tried to even interface with the developer themselves, and they have not been friendly neighbors to them, nor have they even entertained any of their concerns. So I really wish that we would either defer these things, remove them, or something, because more needs to be done in the due process for that community.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes, sir, thank you. Mr. Evans.
Yes, ma'am.
Please explain this process for public inclusion here from the time that the application puts in and when it goes to the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yes, I wanted to clarify that because there were some things that I suppose I said last meeting and that I heard in the public, and I want to clarify that we do have a parties of interest list. And as was stated tonight from the public, that parties of interest list is a standing list for when we have Board of Zoning Appeals applications and Planning Commission rezonings. If a member of the public knows of a piece of property, that they can contact the planning staff and say, hey, this property, please let me know if there's an application for a house or for a site plan review or for something. We can flag that property in our system, and they will have sent us a formal request saying, I want to be notified as a party of interest if there's something on there. That's the party of interest I was talking about for administrative decisions. And we have several of those around where people just want to be notified. They formally requested it. We can put it in our system and notify them. So we don't, in those instances, there's not a mass mail out. It's whoever tells us that they want to be notified of a piece of property. In the case of a mitigation bank where there are Army Corps and OCRM DHEC approvals that are necessary for us to even consider an application, I would think that there would be people in the surrounding area that would know that well before it even got to my desk, because that's how we've been notified from the other administrative decisions that we make. And we'll be happy to take those names and put them on a parties of interest list and notify them when an application is made for a mitigation bank on a piece of property. But as was stated earlier, in this particular instance, I think the process for approval when an applicant requests one of these is years in the making. And somewhere along the line, someone around there is going to know about, and be able to contact us. But that's the process now for administrative.
So is there any way to include notification directly to property owners that are within a certain parameter of the property that's, seeking this change?
Yes, ma'am. We have that process in place for Board of Zoning Appeals applications and for Planning Commission rezoning, which is part of when each case that we present to council, you'll see our notifications were made. as part of that.
Wait a minute now. It sounds like you were saying earlier that once somebody puts in the application, you have a parties of interest list that a person would have to request their name to be put on that.
It's a separate process. When it's administratively approved, Ms. Johnson, if it doesn't go to a board or a commission, we don't notify everyone on the interest parties list of every application that we get for a commercial building or someone's house. We wouldn't know to just notify everybody. It would be impossible for us administratively. But if someone from the public contacts us ahead of time and says, I want to be notified if certain things happen on this property, we have the ability to do that if an application is made.
So that's like the usual way.
But right, that's in the administrative approval process. In the Board of Zoning Appeals process for variances or special exception, or for Planning Commission process for rezoning, we have a standing list of parties of interest to be contacted when those applications are made and to announce when those meetings are held. And that's the list that we mail out.
And you do have people on Wadmalaw on that list?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I just want to make sure. So, of course, you can see I am concerned about the public being able to have notification. And because of the amount of people that have shown up today, because it seems to be kind of unclear to them that they have this notification right. I voted to support this, and I'm going to change my vote on this because I want people to really feel comfortable knowing that they're going to be notified when some of these things come up, which I hope that people now here understand that there is a process that does include the surrounding people on the list of party of interest to get that notification. But I thank you so much for explaining that a little bit more.
Okay.
And I have no further questions.
Before she answers this, was the Coastal Conservation League contacted on this? Are they on your contact list?
They are on our interested parties list for a Board of Zoning Appeals. So when
Did they get, were they notified?
Sorry, they were emailed and were notified of the agenda for the Board of Zoning Appeals for the Point Farms.
All right, so that means they were notified, then they normally would notify the people who's being affected, because.
Correct, but so remember that they were only notified because they're on our interested parties list for the Board of Zoning Appeals. It wasn't when the application for site plan
So they
review.
weren't on the original.
Right, they were not on this. We don't notify interested parties for site plan review applications.
I got
That's
you.
administrative, unless someone from the public says, I want to be notified
I
if
got
something
you.
happens on this property.
I got you. Mr. Swears, and then Mr. Worm.
Specifically for these two mitigation bank items, can we basically borrow from the Board of Zoning Appeal and the Planning Commission policy on public notice and implement that also for mitigation bank decisions that will be made administratively?
That's possible, and I'd have to get with the legal department to help me draft something, but it'd have to be an addition to this. It'd have to be in the ordinance.
We could blend that, right, we could blend that into this ordinance to where these two items we're looking at right now regarding mitigation banks.
If that's what council chose to do, yes, I think we could
And
probably draft
but
something.
bear in mind though, that would be public notice. There's a difference between public notice and public comment and public input.
Correct.
So let's say we did this, and therefore, in a future mitigation bank, there was interest from someone. Their only way to do anything would be to appeal your decision.
It would be an invitation to appeal my decision, yes.
And then that would go to the BZA?
Yes.
Doesn't that cost? Don't you have to pay to do that?
I don't know about that.
You
Yes.
have to pay to do that. I mean, just regular people. I'm sorry, I'm not even recognized, but
Yeah, because I got to go around and.
Okay.
but you have to pay to
Yeah, just-
appeal. It's not free.
Okay, but that is a potential solution. That would get public notice built into the, these two items.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
The other, so I think that's a possible fix. That doesn't really change the outcome though, in my opinion, on the Point Farm scenario, regardless. I mean, public notice is a done deal. Everybody knows, so that doesn't really change the item at hand. To me, though, the other part of this very difficult decision remains the zoning that's available on the site and the zoning that will be retained after the mitigation bank is established and the buffer is established. And Joel, you gave your interpretation of what would occur, but I've had a lot of concerns raised to me that it is just that, an interpretation, that could be subject to challenge in court. Okay.
Yep, just like all the decisions we make are subject to that.
Right,
yes.
right. So my concern would be just that we pass this. I mean, this. Let's face it. These two or three items where we're changing the zoning regulations are tailored to Point Farm. I do worry what that leads to down the road with other mitigation banks, with other scenarios. So I think we're opening up problems there. But the owner / representative, Mr. Nelson, who I think is here again tonight, said that he fully understood that the zoning would end up that way. I would ask him, and this would actually be separate from the zoning changes we're making, would he be willing to commit to that and alter the conservation easement to reflect that he recognizes that zoning and that it is that way, as opposed to at a future date, his ownership group challenge the zoning and try to alter what he can do at a later date. And we can't blend that into the change in the zoning, but we can get a commitment from him, and it will affect my vote.
Well, I appreciate that. With the conservation easement that's currently been placed on the property, we can't go back and alter that for the request that you're making right now. And that's simply because for the mitigation bank, there's a specific form of the conservation easement that is a requirement of the Corps of Engineers as part of permitting the mitigation project. And it is a very restrictive easement that is more restricted than what you typically would find on any other type of protected property. Now, as part of that, part of the misconceptions we have with that easement, there are things that occur with a regular conservation easement that don't occur with a mitigation bank easement, in that we get no special tax treatment with this easement. So there's no tax incentive right now for the owner in relation to the easement for the mitigation bank itself. Now, when we step back away from the mitigation bank boundary and move into the residual uplands, that's a totally separate easement document that has to be, because the level of restrictions is significantly less than associated with the mitigation bank.
I think would be fine. I'll refer to the attorney, but I think a separate document could accomplish it as well. But you see my concern.
I understand the concern.
What appears to be so might not. You all might not even be the owners 5 years from now, and the other owners might say, wow, there's a little loophole we can exploit. So and a lot of the concern from Wadmalaw is what happens to the property after the mitigation bank is established. And you've in good faith told me it is what Mr. Evans said. You're one of the owners, you're not all of them, and you might not be the owner in a future date. So how can we establish that this is what was understood at this date?
Well, let me clarify one thing. I am not an owner in Point Farm, the land, or even the mitigation bank itself. I was hired to develop the mitigation bank and design the restoration plan. So
I thought you were also a part owner.
I can't commit to the owners in what they're going to do on the rest of the property. Now, that being said, my company, when we propose mitigation projects, we do not propose mitigation sites on lands that we feel are threatened for development, particularly in some intensive way that would be a threat to our mitigation project. When we permit a mitigation bank and we finally we go through a 3-year process to get our permit from the Corps, and during that time there are public notices that go out to all of the neighbors, and there were plenty of comments that we received that we had to address through that process. When we finally get our permit, the only thing that we get at that point is the right to create those mitigation credits. And then there are certain steps that we have to start taking to actually create those credits generate the credits and have them available in the open market to offset other impacts. So, for example, in Point Farm, once we put the conservation easement on the property, we were then eligible to receive our first credit release, which I want to say was 25% of the total credits that the bank will produce. We don't get our next credit release until we're allowed to go to construction. And so the bank itself is at a complete standstill until construction occurs. And then once we start moving through the process, we have to monitor what we constructed to show that, one, all of the buffers that we proposed are still intact, that all of the marsh grass that we plant is growing and is robust. And if there are any issues, we actually have to fix them before we can get our next credit release. So we have 50% of our credits hanging in the balance that we have to produce, or that we have to show success before we can obtain those credits. So we have every incentive to make sure the bank itself is successful. This is not something that we just get a permit for, sell the credits, and just walk away from the project. So I say all that to say that as the guy that has to manage this bank and this project, one of my goals is to make sure the owner doesn't do anything that's detrimental to the project. I can't commit to when he would put an easement on the rest of the property. I do know that the overall plan for this project from the beginning was a conservation play. It was a conservation investment, and it was centered around development of the mitigation bank before stepping back and then protecting the rest of the property. To the best of my knowledge, that is still the plan of the owner.
Right. It's the plan, but again, no one has signed on the dotted line that that is what will reach fruition, and that's my concern. I'm wondering how can we make that a certainty?
But we're also caught in the same position to where we have made overtures to the neighbors. I personally have reached out to the Wamala Island Land Planning Committee. I've sent letters. I've tried to explain positions and things that we're trying to do, and I have not received responses for that. Now, understand, again, I'm not the owner, and their desire is to speak with the owners of the property. I can't force the owner to interact, but we're also caught in a situation where we have an entire community that is opposed to a project that actually creates salt marsh. And in doing so, and that has appealed everything that we've done along the way. And we're caught in a position to where we're being asked to commit to something to a group that's opposed to everything else we've done. Now, we understand this may solve a lot of problems, but we actually have no proof from their side either that this would stop all the appeals that we face with this particular project.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that, and I understand your dilemma. But also understand my dilemma, and that's voting on this.
I got it. This is
I approached Joel Evans, planning director, about 3 or 4 weeks ago when I dug into this thing a lot deeper. I said, Joel, why aren't we doing a PD, a plan development? I said we can grab all these loose ends and put them all together and bring both sides to the table and create something that makes sense for everybody. And the only reason he gave me not to was, well, it'll take more time. I don't know why time would be of such essence at this point. We're not even meeting again. This body's not even meeting. It was going to be 6 weeks. I guess now it's going to be a little bit less than that. So, I mean, to me, is a plan development still a better solution for this? Changing our zoning like we're doing, I fear that taking the BZA out of future decisions might be a bad one. The whole public notice thing is kind of getting away from us, and we're going to put a Band-Aid on that. We're trying to solve this in a lot of different ways when maybe a PD would have been the best solution to begin with. We do that quite often, and we all, basically put in there what we really want instead of trying to make this process work and, make this square peg go into that round hole, and that, it's just sloppy. This whole thing's been sloppy.
The fear and concern is of development of the residual uplands on the property. If there were particular zoning issues that required a variance, those still would have to go in front of BZA. There's nothing that's being done here that actually precludes any actual development of the property from ever going in front of BZA or going in front of Planning Commission or anything else. So to hold up the mitigation bank in exchange for something that has not even been proposed is what seems
the reason for that, though, is because...
Gentlemen, okay, this is not the appropriate time. This should have been discussed, before. So we need to wrap this up. Because Mr. Wellman's got a question. So y'all going back and forth. So Mr. Swales, I need you to wrap it up because we can't be up here questioning all night.
I'll say one last comment then. The reason is because this kind of crosses over boundaries. The AG 15 that's left is adjacent to the buffer. The buffer was waterfront. That has a certain zoning. The AG 15 could not benefit from that, but it could be interpreted that maybe those things should blend together. And that's a big difference in the zoning. And that's why you can't separate the two. This has both interests are there. So that's the reason you can't separate it.
Thank you, Mr. Swears. Thank you. Mr. Wellman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I was happy to let Mr. Schweers keep going. I think I have a similar sort of take on the situation. I mean, it seems like we're being asked to sort of, you know, bail out a process that didn't play out the way, you know, obviously the developer was planning for it to. And, you know, if I'm being quite honest, I will say that substantively I don't really see a problem with the project. But I do, some of these process concerns do resonate with me. And the fact that, you know, we've got this dynamic where, you know, the developers don't want to make this commitment to folks who've been, you know, sort of oppositional to them in some way, but they say they're going to do it anyways. I don't know. That's not really great reasoning to me. I mean, if it's going to happen, I would think it would happen. So I don't know. We might. We're on first reading here. This is amended up to third reading.
You can amend up to third reading if it passes, but if it doesn't pass,
Yes.
then it's done.
I'm counting votes. I don't know if this passes, but I'll hear the conversation out. But I'm not a solid yes on this moving forward.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Salisbury, there's been a motion made to move forward, right? Who made the motion?
Mr. Moody.
Chairman.
All right, okay, and it's been a duly seconded. So would you state the motion again? The motion is to,
The motion is to approve item 6D.
okay.
I don't have it right here.
All right, that's all right.
As stated, no public notice required, nothing like that.
All right, that's it. Whatever staff recommendation.
Yep.
Okay. All right, call the roll.
Didn't say anything about public.
Ms. Honeycutt? Aye. Ms. Johnson? No. Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody? Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schweers?
Nay.
Mr. Worman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Okay.
With the right to
Motion
amend up to
passes.
third reading.
5-3. Yes, sir.
I did state that.
Okay.
Oh, okay, wait, I need to read the ordinance now. An ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations, ordinance number 1202, as amended, to allow modification of the OCRM critical line, setback, and buffer subject to conditions for mitigation banks at the following document location, Chapter 4 Base Zoning Districts.
Can I just ask a question just based on process? So when it's a tie, it moves forward?
It's not a tie, it's 5-3.
It goes 5-3.
Guys with tie.
And Mr. Werman wanted to move it along. He's got more discussion, so there's still two more readings. If he changes his mind, decides to do something, Mr. Darby will be back.
I was trying to count the votes. I thought I had 4 and 4, but
Yeah,
maybe
no.
I got something.
So this move the process along, and then, like I said, Mr. Darby will be able to weigh in, and Mr. Werman will be able to weigh in. We all will be able to weigh in again. So just move to the second reading. All right, 6E, what is the pleasure?
For a committee recommendation with ability to amend up to third reading.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, the same comments I made earlier apply here too.
Ditto.
Okay, call the roll. Well, yeah, so we're gonna be confusion. Call the roll.
Yes, sir. Ms. Honeycutt? Aye. Ms. Johnson? Aye. Mr. Middleton? Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schweers?
Nay.
Mr. Worman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes, well, that motion passes 6-2 and 1 absent. And then the ordinance is an ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance number 1202 as amended to allow removal of trees subject to conditions in association with mitigation banks at the following document locations, Chapter 9, Development Standards.
Item 6F.
Committee recommendation with ability to amend up to third reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Sass, any discussion? Ms. Salisbury, call the roll.
Ms. Honeycutt? Ms. Johnson? Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody? Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers? Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
That motion passes 8 ayes and 1 absent. And the ordinance is an ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations, ordinance number 1202 as amended, to incorporate a definition for mitigation bank at the following document location, Chapter 12 definitions.
Item 7A, B, C, D, F, you want to take them one at a time, are you now?
A through F, move to approve.
Consent agenda A through F. Reverend Middleton made the motion, Ms. Johnson second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Item 8,
8A through G, move to approve.
is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. And item 9,
A through
9A through
H.
Through,
H.
yeah, H.
No, we don't have anything. How,
We
yes,
only need A, B, C, D, and F.
yeah, transportation sales tax, A, B, C, D, E, and F.
Okay.
Not E, but F.
Okay, E, all right, so why are we not doing E?
There
Just a
was no
presentation,
motion.
okay.
Yeah, there was
okay.
no motion.
But there's a motion for A through F excluding E.
Move to approve.
Approval.
Second by Ms. Johnson, moved by Reverend Milton. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, ayes have it. 9G is rule, that's just a presentation.
Right.
And then we got the housing update report. But we
Right.
did have a recommendation to come out there to have them form a committee.
You're right.
So what is the recommendation? I mean, what is the pleasure?
The housing?
No, that was the steering committee.
Y'all moved for that. That was,
Sustainability you're talking about.
Sustainability, right.
yeah.
We've already approved
Y'all
that.
moved
We
for
approved that
approval of
in
that.
F.
I do need to read that ordinance.
All right, go ahead with 8 after.
An ordinance establishing the Charleston County Climate Action Committee and other matters relating thereto.
So that's 9F. We did vote on that?
Yes.
Okay,
When I said I wanted to come back,
Yeah.
my amendment was accepted.
Well, you need to read 9C too. An ordinance.
Those aren't ordinances, those are resolutions,
Okay.
I think.
All right.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Adopt
Yeah, we've already,
resolutions.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
On 9G though, I do think we need something to confirm that we are in support of that.
Well, we're gonna send a letter.
This is,
Authorized just by you.
Ordinance, no, it'll be full council.
We didn't vote.
We do letters of support for grant all the time.
Okay.
That the chairman signs. And actually on that one, we're gonna reach out to all of the municipalities affected by those
Okay.
expansions and ask them to sign
We
on
got-
to our
we got-
letter.
get it done.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're now gonna move to public comments. Reverend Middleton?
thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We've had a robust discussion tonight. Thank you to all council members for your input, and please, I hope that nothing I've said offended anybody, but certainly wanted to put it all on the table, recognizing that all these issues are very important, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Swears. Ms. Honeycutt? Okay, Ms. Johnson?
I just want to thank staff, especially Mr. Tunick, for the presentation for the broadband. I know we've been working a long time in my area for broadband to be brought in the Adams Run, well, the entire district. So I'm just glad that we're at this point where we are going to see some changes and something happening, definitely.
Thank you, Mr. Sass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to report that the town of Mount Pleasant has made an amendment to their annexation for sewer service ordinance. And they have agreed to allow any lot, piece, or parcel of land located outside the corporate limits of the town, whether contiguous or non-contiguous, and within the town's official planning area that contains an existing residential structure serviced by a septic system as of June 14th, 2022, may obtain sanitary sewer service from Mount Pleasant Town Waterworks without following the requirements and annexing into the town. This is something that we're going to ask them to come present to us at a future date, but this is really great progress.
Big winner.
A big winner. We've been through this a long time, and I'm very pleased very pleased that Mount Pleasant has seen fit to do this. This is really great progress.
Yes, and thank you for your work on that, Mr. Sass. And now that gives us an opportunity to help those folks over there with funds, because we promised them that we would help them, if it passed, to hook up to this system. So we got a lot of process to do, but, we have to look at supplying some funding to help those folks.
Yes, sir. It's a safety issue.
Safety
and a
issue.
health
so
issue. So.
Look forward to working with you on that, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Pryor, if I could comment on that. Ms. Ham, you might want to look into whether we need to repeal the ordinance we passed with respect to that issue previously. I don't know if you're aware even that exists. But,
Why would you repeal that? Because that's just not for them. That's for anybody. So if somebody else comes behind them.
Well, that's why I say look at it.
Yeah, we
Make
don't
sure
want
it's
to,
not something
go through the process again. So, it's not gonna hurt them, because we never filed the lawsuit. Mr. Moody?
Thank you.
Mr. Werman? Mr. Smalls? Ms. Ham? And I just want to say, with 5A through D, and then 6D through F, we need as much information as we can, by the time this comes up for second reading. And people need to understand, when they come back with this information, if it's not what you want to hear, it's just time to move on. We're asking for information. We can't keep going through the process over and over and wearing our staff out, and the answer is still going to be the same.
Right.
So I'm telling you, council members, you need to get with staff. You need to get with whatever information you need. So when this thing comes back up, we can move it, either move it the right way or either just say, no, that ain't what it is. But I would like to get all the information, because I'm more confused now than I was when I walked in the door. I really am. I'm more confused. And so I'm going to meet with
They're a
them.
lot more tired.
Yeah, I'm going to meet with them to try to get as much information as I can. And I would suggest that each council member do the same thing, set a time to get as much information as they can from the staff. But I'm just, especially with this 6D through F, I'm more confused. I really am. So having that, meeting adjourned.
So if we amend